I'm gonna have to look on it. Okay, I'm
I
gonna
can
take
try
it.
to get in touch with David. I don't see him here, but I can try to get in touch with him.
All right. Do you happen to know who the person is there, Nate?
For Gov Relations, I do not know.
Okay. All right. Well, if you can help us find that out, that would be super helpful. and yeah, if you are able to get a hold of David or Casey, that's great too. All right. Then, do we have anyone here? I know you all already filled this out, but anyone here today from Towson?
Hey, Gaines here. How are you?
Doing well, DeGain. Welcome back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And then UMB. Who do we have here today from UMB?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Marissa. Welcome back.
Hi. So I think the most relevant person for this is our USGA parliamentarian. If we came up with someone else more relevant, I would let you know.
Okay.
But her email is, I'm pulling it up, sorry.
No, you're fine. What's her name?
So Tunisia, and that is Tonecia.
Oh, pretty new.
Last name Brothers Sutton, so Brothers with an S dash Sutton, and then Niv just posted her email in the chat.
Perfect. I'll grab it then right after I do this. My multitasking only has a certain, but thank you. We got it.
And Nikki from UMB today.
Oh, cool.
I'm here.
Hey, good to see you. All right. Who do we have today from UMBC?
I am here. Hello.
Hello.
Rashad.
Oh, perfect. Hey, Rashad. Sorry, I didn't know your voice by heart. Hello, UMBC.
I'm not entirely sure who this would be, Annie, but allow me a couple of minutes to find out, and I will DM you their information. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashad.
Hi, I'm also here. My name is Megan. I'm from the graduate students.
Yes, that's right, Megan. You're new, and we're so happy to have you. Welcome.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Good morning.
Thank you. And then does the grad student side, do you all have somebody for your gov?
Yeah, and that's me.
Oh, perfect. Yep. So that means we probably have, if we don't have you on the listserv yet, because I know you're new, we'll make sure to get you on there, and we're so happy to have you.
Perfect. Thanks for
Of course. Who's here today from Eastern Shore? It's very quiet. No Eastern Shore people? It's quiet on the Eastern Shore. All right. College Park, I know that we already have Ben down here for you all. I saw Dan laughing earlier. Are both Dans here?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Good to see you, Dan and Dan.
Annie, you could also put Simon Sheaf there on the graduate side.
You are so right. I should have known that.
And if you want, so Sasha just handles like civic engagement. So like I'm assuming most of this is about like MGA stuff.
It is.
So you could just put Bateman.
Sweet. Okay. And then I'll add Simon in here too when I can. And I'll fix that basically is what I'm saying. Thank you both. And for those of you on the grad student side, Simon from College Park is doing a really cool effort. That's one of the reasons we're putting this together today. He's trying to get all the grad student side people together. So I really admire that. So a big thank you to Simon and College Park for that. UMCs, who do we got from UMCs?
Hi, Annie, it's Kia.
Hey, Kia.
Hey. I think for this, maybe I'm not entirely sure, like, I don't think we actually have a designated person for this. Do you mean like relations with like the Maryland state legislator, or just like government in terms of within our university? Because that might change.
Oh, that is a good question. It's whoever you would want to be point. So for some places that might actually be the president or a vice president of some sort. Some places that are bigger have somebody designated for this, like a Ben Bateman or a Simon, but smaller schools may have people who are multitasking. So whoever it is that you want in the loop, so that when things are coming up, like the voter and military empowerment, voter empowerment, or DHS come up, folks that we can keep in the loop for your school.
Okay, yeah, I think for the time being, I'd just say me and Anna. And maybe that might be something we talk about of having a specific appointed person, but I think for now, me and Anna would make the most sense.
I think that makes sense to me too. Thanks, Kia. All right, UMGC.
Hi, it's Ashley.
Hey, Ash. There's a baby.
Oh, yeah, this is Vincenzo.
Hey, Vincenzo. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming. Pleasure to meet Vincenzo. Do you know who it would be for you all?
Oh, the graduate students?
Yeah,
So
sometimes we have it for both. Sometimes it's just one.
Oh, for the graduate students, I think.
So
Anita?
I am UMGC graduate. Are you
Okay.
speaking?
Did I hear that right? Were you saying Angela?
Yeah, but I was going to give you another name as well. I don't know if you. Okay. It is. Do you want the name or the email?
We want both, but right now I'm just typing down a name because I think people are chatting the emails to me, and I can't look at my chat at the same time I'm sharing.
Okay, I'll give you Erin, ERIN. Last name FAV as in Victor, AZZA.
Cool. Awesome. And yeah, if you want to you can either DM or everyone the email for Erin. Cool.
Okay.
And this is, let me just be really clear. Is this for the Government Relations Committee? This is what that's for. This is just people to notify for government relations, right?
It is, yeah, but they're not doing like all the committee work.
That's what.
Yeah. They're just, they have like a really active committee, which I'm sure Arsalan and Yvonne will go into. But this is just like making sure all the right people at your right schools know the things they need to know.
Annie, so to that point, we just elected new student advisory council members for UMGC.
Okay.
So once everything is in place for this year, I'll probably get some more names to you as well. We have several new graduate student representatives. So.
Ooh, exciting. Congrats, UMGC. And you have your new president. There's just like a lot of new that's very positive new. That's cool. U Baltimore.
You can add me for that because we don't have a special position for that.
Cool. Excellent. And then Shady Grove.
Hi, Annie. We have me, which is Joy Adai. So I am unsure who our person is, but I'm checking in with Iris, and then I will probably message in the chat with our person.
Perfect, Joy. And thanks for coming again. It's good to see you again.
Of course, it's great to see you.
Yeah, welcome. Do y'all have I forgot, are you all combined, or is it you and Ike today, or is anybody else here from Shady Grove?
I am. So I am taking over Ike's position.
Gotcha.
I'm the grad student for the GSA.
Nice to meet you. Help us make sure we get you on all the things you need to be on, Jesse. We are very happy to have you. Welcome.
Oh, and also,
Annie, I'm also here today, Tiffany Flowers, the president.
Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany. Excellent. All right, excellent. So yeah, when you all message that, we'll add that. And then these two, actually, this was something before we had those two schools say they were not going to be a part of council. So we're good. Awesome. Okay, so now I can stop sharing this and start sharing something else. but everybody, welcome. The live stream is on now for those of you, just so you're aware. We are so happy to have you all back. It has already, I know that for some of us, our schools have already kicked back into gear. For others of us, maybe not so much, but it has been, I think it would be an understatement to say, a very interesting time this past week for things that directly impact our lives, but I think also have a direct message for all of us who participate in shared governance as well and work to represent and advocate for folks. So as we continue conversations, if things from the past week are relevant for you, feel free to bring them up as needed. We hope everyone stayed healthy and happy over the break as much as possible, and that you're finding good balance. And with that, we'll just go ahead into our agenda. So we'll begin with reports as per usual. And then we have Brad Fallon joining us as the guest. Brad Fallon is who reached out to us for the Student and Military Voter Empowerment Act. That, thank you all voted swiftly and overwhelmingly in support over break, like applause for all of you. So really, thank you for doing that. It enabled us to participate in the press conference last Wednesday and will help us participate throughout. And I know as we continue, we'll start to see what other issues are coming up that we'll have a similar process for. So with that, I will begin to share the screen again when one moment. I have to switch it to here. And I have to refresh. Thank you for your patience. One moment. There we go. Okay, now I can share. All right, so I'll do that. And so, oh, cool, there's people in here. Excellent, I'll go to the podium. Okay. So I guess my reports first. So as I was saying, thank you all again. We shared some of the articles that picked up the student and military voter empowerment. Something that you can do if it's of use to you is to help link people to understand what USMSC does. You can say, hey, we supported this. Here's where it's getting picked up. Hopefully it will also drum up interest at your own individual institutions for things that are going on at MGA, Maryland General Assembly this year, and starting to get people excited and also helping educate them as to what this all looks like so they can participate as students, but then beyond as well. We have continued joint council work and MHEC work. So MHEC is working with us to hopefully have a session similar to what we did with the USM naming policy, where they're specifically going to seek out through the council a widespread representation of viewpoints for their plan that they're coming up with for higher education in Maryland, or sorry, post-secondary education in Maryland for the next 5 years. So we'll probably be inviting Kyle back, but we haven't quite decided what that format will look like. But keep it in your mind as something. We've sent that link out a few times. You can see what they used to do. You can see what impact you can have with your inputs for that process. The joint council work actually relates to this bottom one as well. The joint council work, especially with CUSIF, which is the faculty, is having a lot to do with how we actually begin to act upon those really important themes that and questions and concerns and ideas that everyone came up with in December and throughout this fall semester as related to COVID-19. So I'm just going to do a quick poll. I remember that Mershad from UMBC and Ashley from UMGC wanted to stay in the loop on that. Is there anyone else who wants to be a part as we begin to schedule meetings with the interested and influential parties surrounding those efforts? Is there anyone else who'd like to join that?
Annie, this is Yvonne. I would.
You would? You got it. Excellent. Anybody else?
Hi, Annie. This is
Sorry, Megan.
Sure.
Sorry. This is Megan. I would definitely be interested.
Megan? Okay, I can remember that. Megan and Yvonne, excellent. Anybody else?
Annie, could you add me as well?
Yes. I sure can. I sure can. And anyone else? All right. If you change your mind, if you want to write in the chat, today would be the day to let me know because we're going to start planning stuff for this week. Cool. Excellent, everybody. I will let the civic engagement and mental health be covered by our directors. Just know that we've been doing a lot of work throughout December and even over the break relevant to both of those topics. So with that, I will happily hand it over to our wonderful VPs. Bernetta?
All right. Thank you, Annie. Happy Sunday, y'all. Happy New Year, everyone. So let's see. What is your vice president up to? We are looking to really kick off 2021 strong, right? So that means implementing the priorities and initiatives and just seeing those all the way through this year, working with our board of directors and our committees. We do have some meetings planned and we have a lot of work in store. So that's exciting. Along those lines, I'm also going to be working to strengthen and enhance our communications to support those priorities and those initiatives and just to kind of follow through on all the ideas that we've started coming up with at the beginning of the year. Additionally, I like to start drawing from our data. So we have our system dashboard. So what does our data tell us? You know, whether we're doing research or looking at those numbers, how can we incorporate that in some of the planning and decisions that we're making, as well as just being more forward thinking. And he talked a little bit about the Voter Empowerment Act and our support for that. You know, we've supported a number of different statements that have gone out this year. So continuing that effort as well in terms of the policies and bills and being prepared for what's coming with the new administration. Whether that means reversing some things or putting some new things in place, we will certainly have our eyes and ears to the ground there. Civic engagement, you know, that there's a lot going on right now. So we certainly plan to continue support there. We've been very involved with that committee since before the election as well as post-election. So continuing collaboration and encouraging students to work together through this. You know, our voices do matter. And if you are hearing, you know, any concerns from your students in your campuses, please do let us know how can we support right now and moving forward during the transition. Also, as Annie mentioned, we have a new president at UMGC that's starting on January 4th this year. So that's very exciting. We did a lot of work in preparing for that and all the interviews that took place. So Dr. Gregory Fowler is now UMGC's new president. He does have a Twitter account, so you can follow him on Twitter if you're interested as well. And I don't know, maybe Ashley and Beth would have more to add to that later today. And then our STAC also held elections at UMGC as well. So we'll plug those folks in where we can as well. So that's all I have for today. Turn it over to Laura.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So the past few months, I've been in development of a toolbox for USMSC. You might have seen in December, I sent out a USMSC organizational chart and a tool for student disability and accessibility. The goal is to, as I see it, is to help smooth the transitions of power and increase productivity and understanding and capability for leaders joining the USMSC, kind of minimize that, lag time and turnover, especially going into the new year, looking at all the leadership turnover we're going to be, USMSC is going to be experiencing in 2021. And new project is in the development stage, in work on a student success story campaign for USMSC, hopefully to promote what you guys have done, kind of set an example and show a path of success for other students and recruit new talent for USMSC. Definitely have been monitoring Maryland bill development as everyone, it's super active right now, and I'm not going to beat that dead horse. Everyone's kind of talking about that. And continuing collaborative communication across the council to build council and committee success, to see all those things that we started in the last term, how can we follow through and make sure we get the best results that we can for our students in the spring term. One thing I haven't been able to make contact or get any feedback or anything from so far, nothing on you guys. I know it's super busy, but UMB, College Park, Towson, Frostburg, Salisbury, Coppin, and well, Eastern Shore, I don't think they're here today, but if you guys would give me possibly 30 to 40 minutes sometime, you know, even in any time in the next month, really, for me to get feedback and for you to kind of give me kind of input on what your thoughts are, so I can help review and improve our strategies going forward in the next semester. I'll send you guys an email later today, and please respond. And then last thing, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the committees because they'll talk about that, but the mental health committee is definitely robust, and looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish in the spring.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Thanks, Bernetta, and thanks, Laura, for all your hard work. You definitely keep it up. Oh, why is it? Here we go. Nate, what do you have for us?
Good morning. Well, it's wonderful to be with you all in the new year. I just wanted to briefly recap what's been going on with our board, and I'm sure Joe and Zakia will correct me if I get any of this wrong or add to whatever I'm missing. But at last month's board meeting, on Annie's behalf, I offered the student council report, in which we basically just touched on the main points of Annie's letter, but then also mentioned our special meeting in which we had spoken about that grading flexibility concern as well as our graduate student workers. And so just like we had spoken about at that special meeting, I look forward to continuing that conversation with all of you just to ensure that the spring semester goes as flawless as it can possibly go, and just that we're meeting any concerns and addressing concerns and having that increased communication that I know we all want to strive for as well. And then I also wanted to just bring to your attention in regard to this past week's horrific events at our Capitol, the Chancellor released a statement on behalf of the system, and so I would encourage you all to go to our website and read that statement, and I can drop that link in the chat as well. In addition, many of your university presidents have also released statements as well, so I'd encourage you to take a look at those. And not to pick anyone out, but I have to say I read the statement from President Anderson at UMES, and I thought her statement was very poignant, and I really would encourage you to read that statement in particular. I think she hit it spot on with a number of concerns. And so I'll drop a few links in the chat for you to check out at your leisure. But I just want you to know that our system has responded to that in a number of ways. And we all are horrified, and we want to be a part of making sure our democracy is functioning as it should be. And that's why that civic engagement work that we all continue to take part in is so vitally important for all of us. Moving on to other meetings and that sort, we have an EPSL meeting this Tuesday. And so thank you to Joe and Zakia for keeping us going over the winter break. I'm looking forward to that meeting. And then we also have a special Board of Regents meeting on Wednesday. And so all kinds of exciting things happening this week. And you can, of course, look at any of the public session agendas on the USMD website. And we also have a public health competition. And I know this is something that Zakia had sent a few emails about over the past couple of months. You can win up to $3,000 by submitting a video or some type of graphic talking about why it's important that we play a role in this pandemic and getting vaccinated and encouraging our peers to abide by social distancing guidelines and, play it safe and get that vaccine when it becomes available to us. And so if you want to read more about that, I know you all have received, I think, a couple emails about it, but please do consider entering that competition, both to spread awareness throughout our system, but also to have a chance at winning $3,000. There are going to be multiple awards given out there. So it really is an amazing opportunity for our students. And so please continue to push that through your channels and social networks as well. And then lastly, I also am encouraged that we continue to have great communication amongst the USMSD leadership and myself, and we're looking forward to spring. And on that note, I know that Annie and I and Bernetta have been emailing back and forth, and Laura as well. And we look forward to hopefully having a meeting between the few of us later this month so we can continue to prioritize our strategies and efforts as we look forward to the spring semester and beyond. So thank you for all of that. And I hope I wasn't too long-winded, but I hope I touched on everything adequately. So thank you, Annie.
Sure thing. Thanks, Nate. All right, Student Affairs, Ben and Dan.
Hi, everyone. It's been a bit of a slower winter break for us because we just wanted to take time to really plan out our committee work for the next semester, and we are still in that process right now. We have set out a date on 2/21/21 after the semester starts, so that way everybody has time to settle in, and hopefully we'll have time to outreach more for the committee. And we are looking forward to everything this new year is going to bring. We're going to be short today, so that way everybody else gets a little bit more time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. All right, diversity and inclusion, Tangela and Paige.
All right. Happy New Year, everyone. It's good to see everyone again. So for us, we held our first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee meeting on the 18th of last month, right before Christmas, just to catch up with everyone, introduce ourselves, and see what's going around the system. So far, not too much was going on. So yeah. Our next meeting is next month on the 19th. Everyone is welcome. We didn't have as many people come as we would have liked to, but yeah, everyone's welcome to come, and more people can join if you guys would like to. So yeah. And Tangela, you can touch on anything if I missed anything.
Paige, this is Joe Boffman, and I'm sure Zakia is still on and listening. I want to make sure that the system-wide Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council is in appropriate contact with this committee. I'll ask Zakia how you are you using these people as representation on the system-wide council?
So Joe, they have been connected. When we had our last Diversity and Inclusion Council meeting for the system, the ladies here were invited. Paige was able to attend. And so that's going to be our main connection. And I'll keep both of them in the loop with meeting dates. But the committee to which Paige is referring are just student members.
Right. I just wanted
our co-directors. Our co-directors here are the connection.
Yeah, I want to make sure the student committee was appropriately connected with the overarching committee. I was sure it would be, but I just want to double check. Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks, Tangela. If there's anything too, I'll put this out for like the whole council. I think what you bring up is a really good point. So like repeatedly, we've seen diversity, equity, and inclusion top everyone's like agenda setting forum, like without a doubt in the top 3. So members of the council, when we actually finally had that meeting, it was kind of like nothing's going on. So those two things don't match. So if the council members would like to help out, like that's a role of the council too. Help Paige, help Tangela know what you want them to focus on, because clearly it's in the forefront of your minds because your constituents care about this and there's things going on. So I'll open that up if you want to say anything now, or if you want to put anything in the chat. It would really help us know, because we know it overarchingly because you keeps going up on the top 3. It's important to you, but we need to now start to get down to those concrete things that Tangela and Paige and the committee can start putting their efforts towards. You have this group that really wants to do something now, so let's use it. All right, cool.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Yeah, sure thing. That happens all the time. Things like this.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Next we have mental health. Beth, what do you have for us?
Hello, guys. Thank you, Annie. It's so funny because whenever we communicate, I'm like, oh, I have to confer with my partners on the mental health committee. And I mean everyone who's expressed interest at this point, but really I also mean Annie and Laura, who I'm like, please be at this meeting if you can. Like, I know that you'll be at this meeting if I can't be at this meeting. So it's kind of assumed, but special shout out to Zakia for connecting us with the USM counselors. So this week we will be meeting with all of the counseling offices across the system who will be convening for a regular event that they have, and just connecting with them very quickly and asking them some questions. And I do want to open it up and offer you guys the opportunity. If you have a question about your particular counseling center that you haven't been able to elevate yet, or there's anything that you want me to elevate in that specific conversation, then please feel free to reach out and let me know that. It's really a privilege that there's so oftentimes that we feel like we're kind of alone, and especially right now that we feel isolated in the way we think. And it's at least 30 people on this call who really care about all of the things we're talking about, everything that the committees are doing, everything that the mental health committee is doing. So I thank you for that kind of energy and support and feedback as we go on. In December, we talked about what the mission and vision kind of would be for the committee and established objectives. And those include awareness, intervention, and advocacy as it pertains to mental health of the USM student population. And awareness is really going to be about elevating those messages of where resources that you can go at the campus level, at the national level, things that might be free and available to you that you don't know about, but also awareness might even, Bernetta, just to plug this in, potentially in the future, sort of a look at that data piece. And is there anything we can look at USM wide, RE, the mental health and wellness of our students, that can sort of feed into our long range strategic planning? Intervention, that's really when we're talking to the counseling offices about what are the different concerns that are driving students to you, and separating those out into two buckets. There's high need students that really overwhelm the offices because they need a very consistent support structure that's very expansive that the school itself might not be able to supply. And then there's casual needs students who might feel turned away at times because either it's not right for them or maybe they feel the counseling center's too busy. And then the interventions, we're really looking at the graduate level also, how that impacts licensure at the state level for lawyers, for future doctors, for people who are pursuing professional careers that they have to issue statements about their mental health and how that disclosure process works. And is there anything that we can advocate for either as a resolution or that we can try to seek out novel partnerships for to maybe change the way that is or to destigmatize that in some way, which leads us into advocacy. Are there opportunities for us to maybe make a resolution that's joint between our councils that says, hey, maybe in every syllabus we have a statement about mental health that links out to the relevant resource page for that school, as simple as that, or as large as, hey, we as the students that represent the University System of Maryland understand that mental health is key to the future of our workforce, that we as professionals are going to be better moving forward if we have the resiliency, the ability to cope as professionals, and see what at the state level or through MHEC collaboration we can do to make that happen. So as far as the committee itself goes, we've got about 12 plus active contributors right now, mostly UMGC students. So I say all the things I've said to say, hey guys, if there's someone at your campus or if you personally even just want to be involved as I want to read things, I want to have conversations, please reach out. I would love to see more from schools like Salisbury, Coppin, Frostburg, that are smaller campuses that might not have the robust level of resources that others do. How can we help you with that? And we do have contributors pursuing careers in counseling and mental health. You don't have to be active in every single thing, but if you are entering those professions, would love to hear from you, would love to have you on board with this. And that is my update for now.
Thanks so much, Beth. All right. Student fees, Dan.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So just two quick things. One, as things ramp up and as MGA starts up again, obviously we'll have the opportunity to testify and whatnot on these bills. And so that will be exciting. I know Frostburg, because Max reached out, is excited about this as well. And I believe they are officially supporting it through their own student government. So if any of you also find yourself supporting it through your own student governments, please let me and Ben Bateman know. Ben Bateman's just going to be coordinating some of that gov-related stuff, at least from College Park's end. So we definitely appreciate knowing about that so we can help with strategy. And I will be sending out an email to the people on our list about meetings ahead as we look at different policies as well beyond just this bill.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. And for those of you interested in just getting us your student fee info, that would be awesome as well. You can email that to Dan and me. We'll keep collecting it. But thanks, Dan. Gov Relations, Arsalan and Yvonne.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? So before I talk about our legislative agenda for this session, I will kind of give everyone an overview of how we're going to be looking at legislation, how we're going to be processing that here at USMSC. So for the past several months, Yvonne and Zirkle, as well as I, have been kind of coming up together with what our legislative agenda for this session will be. And so we'll go through several bills and we're kind of looking at what are the pros, what are the cons of these bills, how can this affect or impact students at USM schools. And then once we're looking at that, we're also seeing what are some possible amendments that we can add on to those bills. So a few of the bills that we're working on, if Andy, you can go back to the previous slide, I can.
Yeah, my thing is doing something funny every time. It's gonna make me go back here. My apologies. I wanted to ask Arsalan, did Andrew join us today?
I believe he's trying to join. I think he has having some internet connections, but I think he said he's trying to join.
If he joins, feel free to give him a shout out so people will know who he is too.
Yeah, whenever he does, or whenever I see that he does, I'll try to let you guys know.
All right, 1 second, Arsalan. Thank you for your patience. There we go.
Yeah,
I'm
so
just
these are
gonna
just
cut the computer.
yeah, no worries. So these are just a few of the bills. And by the way, if you guys want to know more about these bills, I'm more than happy to talk to you about them. But just a quick overview. So we're working on a textbook bill. The HB 380 that might be a little bit wrong because there's two bills with the very similar wording with different numbers. So we're still working on that. But the textbook bill, in a nutshell, what it does, it takes out the so currently textbooks are not part of the sales tax free week, like how school supplies are. And so what we're trying to do is trying to bring those textbooks as well, as part of that tax free week at the end of August. So, and it's in that really good time frame where folks that are going to college can know what textbooks to buy or what not to buy. So they'll, it's kind of works out really well in terms of the time frame. And then we have another one, an MCE bill that University of Maryland College Park is working on as well, Ben Bateman. And this one is related to the MCE, Maryland Correctional Enterprises. So that one gives some type of preferred enrollment for folks that were formerly incarcerated to attend not only four-year institutions like USM schools, but also community colleges and other schools across the state. And then we also have another bill that we're working on with Mary Perg, the Student Climate Action Group, and trying to see how we can make our campuses a little bit more green and more energy efficient. And then the last one that we kind of worked on very recently was the HB 0156, the Student and Military Voter Empowerment Bill. Now that was, let me try to spend a minute on this one because this is kind of important. A lot of you guys have, voted in favor of this bill, which is great. And, Yvonne and I were discussing about this and how it's a really good bill, but we're still trying to push for a few amendments. There's two parts that I think, we're kind of having a few questions about, and I'm sure Brad, when he joins the call today, will address those questions to him. But one of those is the clause about the 2 hours excused absence. So for that one, we feel as though for most students, those 2 hours are just not enough. And whether you're a suburb school or an inner city school or a rural school, that 2 hours isn't really going to be, sufficient for most folks. So for College Park folks, for example, that live in Carroll County or, maybe in like Frederick or Gaithersburg, it just takes an hour to get there. And for folks maybe in inner cities, you could take an hour just to be in line, and not to mention a whole 30-40 minutes trying to find parking and try to do that as well. And even for folks in more rural areas like Salisbury or the Eastern Shore, it's going to again take a long time for them to go back home and vote. So we just don't think 2 hours is enough. On top of that, there are a lot of questions on how that 2 hours is going to be kind of framed in, because there is very loose language on that. So technically, a school can give 2 hours off between like 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. That's still technically you're still following the law on that, when that wouldn't make sense because polls are closed by then. So we're trying to put a little bit more wording, a little bit more framework on that 2 hours, if not even try to make it a whole day off. I mean, that's what our goal is. And we're going to be talking with Brad. We'll be talking with Patrick Hogan and Andy Clark to kind of see if we can kind of do that as well. One other thing is the 15 clicks clause of the bill. Last year, this bill was introduced, and one of the biggest proponents against this bill were community colleges and other small universities that were arguing that that adding the 15-click marker and that little thing where you can kind of measure how many clicks were clicked on a website is going to take too many resources. They have to hire someone and put that in their website, and not all websites are capable of doing that. So we're trying to see if we can kind of remove that clause as well, and see if we can kind of do something and still make it in a place where it's effective, but not have a quantitative number behind that. So that's just my quick spiel on the Student and Military Voter Empowerment Bill. Annie or Lord, do you guys want to talk about the collective bargaining? Because I know you guys know a lot more about that than I do.
Can I just say one thing about the voter empowerment bill, just for the record, I guess? You mentioned the 15 clicks was an issue last year for some of the schools. The day off of school was too. So when the bill didn't pass, it may have been for a number of reasons. Maybe the clicks got some people, maybe the day off of school got others.
Yeah.
And so I just want to just share that that was part of amendments that other entities put in to try to take out the full day, which may be why the legislators who introduced it this year tweaked it some. So your committee is of course more than welcome to have conversations about however you want to proceed, but I just wanted to give that background.
Yeah, and that's what we were also discussing, right? I mean, the last year one of the other main reasons why it did not pass was the full day off, and that's something that we're gonna talk with Brad and see if there's a way that maybe we can do 4 hours instead, or I mean, at the bare minimum, we want to make sure that those 2 hours have some type of language, but that's not even what we're aiming for. What we're aiming for is trying to see if we can extend that. But it's still something that we'll talk with Delegate Ludke and Brad and see what we can do with that. So it's still something that's in the process and still in the works.
And this is Joe Baughman. Let me say that certainly the system is supportive of as many students voting as possible. One of the, or a couple of the pieces of information is to make sure that all of the students are getting the appropriate information on how to do mail-in ballots and early voting, so that in fact people do not have to wait until election day to do their voting. But part of that is our support for making sure that the appropriate information is out there so that students have access to it.
Cool. So Annie, do you want to talk about the collective bargaining, or should I?
Oh, before we go on to that, I mean, I'm happy to help with that, and I'm sure Laura is too, but before we go too far into that, I know that at least one school had a question about the student climate action, Mary Perg. I hope you don't mind me calling you out, but Kia, I don't remember the question from UMCs. What was the question from UMCs about that particular bill?
I have to double check with Anna. She had been working with them more closely, so I'll double check with her and let you know. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah.
And we're working with these individuals and we're working with delegates that are co-sponsoring or sponsoring these bills. So we're more than happy to answer any questions, or if we can't answer them, then we're more than happy to ask the delegate or take the question further on.
Cool. Yeah, and I can't mess with my screen because y'all saw what happened when that happened. Like fix it for Arslan, but I can also pull that up for later too from Anna. But I think it had something to do with, I think Mary Perg might be also looking just for singular school support and trying to balance student government leaders' roles supporting as schools with lending support through like the polls that we're doing for a full council support piece.
And one other thing, Annie. So before I forget, so whenever in the coming week, we'll be starting to push these bills out to you guys, and with those bills, we'll also send like a really quick, small 1 page or maybe even half a page summary of the bill with a pros and a cons section as well, kind of like our analysis of the bill. And then once you guys vote in either in favor or against this bill, we'll start working on the advocacy end of that. So we're already, starting to work with the comms team to see if we can kind of have folks come out and testify in these, in favor or against these bills. So we are also working on the advocacy end as well. So, yeah.
That is so awesome. And I know that folks in this virtual space with us are going to be so grateful to have synopses like that help them understand a bill without having to go through the whole document through all that language. So thank you, big thank you to you and Yvonne and that whole committee, because I think that is extra work, but I think people really appreciate it. So thank you. The collective bargaining bill, as far as I know, I think it's mostly still in the collecting student stories phase. So if you have students at your various institutions who are graduate students where this is of concern, this would be a great time to just start letting Arslan and Yvonne and Laura know. In addition, I would say the other piece that's kind of going on right now is if you have your information for the meet and confer body at your institution, it would be really great to help Yvonne and Arslan get in touch with those folks to see how each school is really doing. And if you can't find out who that person is, that's really notable and important information for us to know, as well as whether or not that meet and confer body is functioning right now as part of what we're picking assessing. But yeah, with that, Laura, what else do you think we should?
Just to update everybody on what's going on there. It's still, as far as I understand, still shopping for a sponsor. So nothing solid is up for debate by us yet. And it looks like it's going to be the same as last year, which effectively is just changing the language or the definition or the language that's in the existing bill, which right now the law removes the right for students to entertain the option of collective bargaining altogether. That's illegal for students or graduate employees. And it would just change that to give them the right to entertain that option at some point or any point, and for students to have that choice. So if that's the case, if that does or whenever that does get a sponsor, we will dissect that more. And just as Arslan said, we'll kind of give you a summary, pros and cons, so it's easily digestible and you guys can kind of consensus caucus amongst your students in your own school and kind of figure out if you guys are interested or want to support that. But that's in the future. Right now, it's just kind of in the planning or shopping for a sponsor stage. So not even sure if it's going to go forward this year, but we definitely want to make sure that we keep you guys in the loop. So in case this comes up again next year, you aren't starting from scratch as never heard this before, don't know what's going on. We want to keep that information flowing.
For sure.
Yep. And yeah, as I said, any questions you have about these bills or more for any other bills that we could work on, then please feel free to reach out to me or Yvonne. And then last but not least, the Government Relations Summit. So Annie, in the beginning of the
Arsalan, we skipped over the advocacy plans. Do you want me to lead or you want?
Go ahead.
Okay. So advocacy plans outside of government relations within our council, we want to bring awareness to the council outside of just us or student government. All students within the university system should be aware of what the council is, what we're here for. So we decided that we should do something where students come and they give a testimony of what it was that this council brought to you and to your life. I know for me, it's a lot of different things that we could touch into, but just joining this council, I was only aware of it because I was the student government president of the University of Baltimore. And then I couldn't fill the position, so I just had to take the lead and go to the meetings, fell in love with it. It led me to want to come and apply for the MGA and other things throughout our outside of it, it helped me talk to people, or how did it really impact you as a whole, as an individual, as a student, as a leader in our society? So we want to get testimonies from students on this board and just figure out how we can put this together. We do want to talk to Niv and Nayla Benet a little bit more about how we can reach more students. We have 172,000 students in our system, and it's 30 here. Let's make that larger and let that number grow outside of our council this year. So we will reach out to everyone, look for an email from Arsalan and I within the coming weeks. We wanted to make sure break was, enjoyable for you guys. So that's for our advocacy plan within our council, but also we want to make sure that we're advocating and we're educating everyone on our council about what MGA does, understanding the bills. You see a HB next to something or SB, understanding the small things so you guys know what kind of bills to look up. Or when you're looking up a bill on the MGA site, you know exactly what to put in, what numbers to put in. So just so you guys know, HB means House bill, SB means Senate bill. So just things like that, just making you guys more aware. As Arsalan said, we're going to do one-pagers and not just give you bills. Our committee will work on just maybe a brief synopsis of what this bill entitled, because it could be a bit intimidating. So just making the next 90 days, very easygoing, smooth for you guys. And then, so that's all on the advocacy at this moment. And then Government Relations Summit, which we're really excited about. As directors, we would like to connect all of the directors in the schools together. How do we all collaboratively work within this next 6 months? How do we work together? yes, we're government relations, but we want to make sure that we are also connecting. Like we shouldn't only meet this one time a month. We need to meet like multiple, maybe some team building exercises, maybe something that could say, how can I help with student fees? Dan mentioned student fee bill that he wants to bring forth. Okay, well, how can I help you within, within the developmental stage of that, along with diversity and inclusion? That's government relations in a nutshell. Like everyone needs to be included, diverse, just to make sure we're bringing everyone together. So our summit is just going to be something where we can connect outside of just a regular board meeting. We're sitting online for a few hours. Like, how do we really in touch with each other and just kind of make this something that will last for the next administration or what have you further on? Arsalan, do you have anything to add? Did I miss?
I think you were spot on.
Okay. So that's basically us in a nutshell. We have been working through break. We're going to continue to work. Session starts this upcoming week on the 13th. So we're excited about that. We have a committee meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. Drew is not online yet, but he is our chair. We do have a chair for our committee, and we also have a secretary for our committee, just to ensure that we're getting everything done for you guys throughout this time, that we're not dropping the ball. And if we are, we're going to pick it up. So yes, that's what we have. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thanks so much, everyone.
Oh, Bernetta, you have a question?
Not a question, but a quick plug. And this is a shout out to Yvonne. I don't know if you all know, but she was selected as a 2021 fellow with the Maryland General Assembly. So I just wanted to congratulate Yvonne. And if you want to share a little bit more about what that entails, and I know you talked a little bit about MGA, so I just want to make that plug.
Yes, so I'll be working on, and I checked with Zakia, I checked with MGA, DSL, and so I'm going to be working on a committee that we are not going to be sending bills to, so it's no conflict. I'll be working on Economic Matters Committee, where our bills normally go to appropriations or ways and means, so we're good there. I checked with the ethics lawyer for MGA. MGA is the Maryland General Assembly for the state of Maryland. So I'm excited. So we started last week. This week will be an official week. And I'm just excited to learn as much as I can and why I went out for this. So this is a part of the testimony. If you guys want to send in any testimonies, being on the board last year with USM, SC, it just helped me open up my mind. Like, what is it that you really want to do? I know you want to go to law school, but how can you help your community now? And seeing the fellowship, and I applied for it because I felt like, well, how could I help my board? Like the more I know on the MGM side, the more I can give to the students and help them understand how things work, how we can pass things for the system, and just be more transparent with our work. So I'm excited. I'll keep you guys updated. And if anyone want to join a committee, and we're our committee, we're working, we're active, we're there. Bernetta is a member. Our vice president is a member. So yes, thank you guys.
Thank you, and big congratulations, Yvonne.
Thank you.
To further that, and while it's on my brain, to further that excitement about involvement with council in these roles, the senator who is co-sponsoring the Student and Military Voter Empowerment Act started out as a student regent. So that was pretty cool too. So, all right, communications and marketing, Nivanay.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, we'd like to apologize for the lack of product being pushed out. For me personally, I don't want to speak for Niv, but the last month and a half has been very hard for me mentally. So that's not really an excuse, but it is a reason as to why I haven't been as active. But what we do want to do starting very soon is implementing the ideas we had previously about doing these Instagram polls and more frequent posts about what's happening in our council meetings. I know Niv is taking notes on this meeting right now. So I know that by tonight, I will be able to make a little infographic of exactly what happened and put it into like very simple terms and post that to our Instagram page. And I also want to do a Meet account. So I know there's some posts on the Instagram page already, but they're from a while ago. So I would like to make an updated version of that and either have you guys send in like photos of yourselves doing something that you enjoy or a short video, and we can compile it into a post to just let people know, you know, who's in charge, who they're talking to, how to reach out to you guys. If you would like, you could just reach out to us through email and send in like your ideas or what you would like to do in that video. Maybe I can send out a Google form. I'll probably do that. And Niv, if you want to touch on the student success stories. Is Niv here?
Niv left a message in the chat that her her audio wasn't connecting, so she can't reply to us right now.
She's trying to get back on with her phone, okay. Or maybe she'll hop back on in a second.
Okay, then I can just touch more on what I talked about before with the Google Forms. So I know something that will help Niv and I a lot is maybe if we have like a Google form that I mentioned, if we were to send that out maybe once a month, would you guys like to participate in that and sending like a request form of what you would like us to post or anything that happens within your respective, not councils, the word I'm blanking, but if you want us to share something that you've personally accomplished within your respective like sections or everything, you can send that to us and we can make an Instagram infographic for Twitter and Facebook and we can post that. Would you guys like to do that? Just once a month, send in everything that you want us to do.
I think that sounds fine. I mean, if that really helps you go forward and, you know, definitely it's a really challenging time right now. So I think that that's perfectly fine. So whatever we need to do, that's great.
Thank you. And for the Meet the Council, do you guys have any ideas off the bat now or that you'd be more comfortable with? I know that maybe making a video might be hard for some people depending on your access to technology and things like that. So would you like any ideas of how we can make that happen? Like, would you rather do like a PowerPoint or just like a quick picture or something like that?
Nayla Bonet, this is Javon. May I ask that we connect after this? Could possibly go within the advocacy part that we wanted. Maybe we can extend it into social media and help you guys as well. Like maybe we can just put our brains together and figure out how as a council we can leverage social media at this time.
Can I get in on that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Personally, I think I responded to the email that you guys sent out a day, maybe yesterday. I unfortunately cannot meet after this meeting. I have a prior engagement, but if you like to set up like a Google invite, then I can probably like make a later time. We can meet later, but today I can't after the meeting.
No, that's fine. We can find a time that we can meet.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. We can also do it through email if it comes down to that, but I'd love to like collaborate with that and it'll give us more ideas to post more and be more engaged. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Nayla Benet. And we're here as you need us. And when I say we, I think I mostly mean the execs, but also your fellow directors if we're ever able to help support. So we will take you up on that. And I just got totally swamped, so I'm sorry I didn't write you back last night or tell other people that you couldn't come today. But we really appreciate you and Niv. And I know you can't talk, Niv, so just know that all the good vibes to you both. And thanks for your update. Okay, advisors.
I'm trying to get my stuff together. Okay. Hi, everyone. I have the first bullet, and then Joe will handle some updates. Every year, the shared governance groups, so the students, faculty, and staff, complete separate, what we call shared governance reports. They are reports that are designed to give the chancellor insight into how each of those constituency groups feel shared governance, meaning how your institution is sharing in the governing process. So your USG, your SGA, GSA, faculty council, staff council, in some places they're combined, how those groups interact with university leadership to help the school run. So we want to get an idea of your insights into those things. The USMSC for the last couple of years has organized that around a survey. And the survey would go out, your information would come back into the executive board, and then they, even though they might not know it, Annie does, would be responsible for writing the report that goes to the chancellor. I was not able to do it before this meeting, but what I will do, just because we want to make sure we stay on time, is to send to you last year's survey. And if everyone could take a look at last year's survey, which underwent a good bit of updating from the previous year. So it may be in decent shape, but you may have some ideas and some thoughts on what you want to put in that survey and how you want to organize it. So I'll send that survey out to our listserv, and we'll give you a deadline by which we need some feedback. I think we still have time, Annie, in the February meeting to take a look at it and make that be the final say-so. And then after the February meeting, with any last feedback, that would need to go out from Annie to the campus representatives here with a turnaround of about 3 or 4 weeks. So once you all see it, just kind of get in your mind, I would suggest, your campus process, so you know what you're going to do once you get the link or the survey, and you know how you and your colleagues, your peers on campus are going to handle the gathering survey information. So within a week or so from now, because I want to make sure I float it through the executive team first, look out for an email from me with the survey. And again, I'll need your feedback so we can use the next meeting in February as the place we say the final deal for the survey before you get it and then need to turn it back around to us. So, and I think ideally the marker is that all of this kind of needs to be done before you go to spring break, I think is the best plan. If it lingers a little bit after that, it's probably not the end of the world, but then that makes things crunch time for those who are writing the report. So more specifics as we go, but for now, just know, looking for survey, please give feedback, and we'll roll from there. Any questions initially? All right, thank you.
Sure thing. Any updates from you, Joe?
Yes, I have a couple that I would like to share some information about. Right now it's pretty much focused on COVID, as you might expect. First of all, hopefully all of you are aware of just how tough the environment is out there right now. I spent Friday afternoon at the Unified Command at the University of Maryland Medical Center. And at that point in time, they get constant feedback about beds available in hospitals. And if you looked at the 13 hospitals in the University of Maryland Medical System, that includes the Medical Center, St. Joe's, Midtown, Charles Regional, Shore Regional, Baltimore, Washington, a lot of hospitals. There were a total of 4 ICU beds open in the state. So it is tough out there. So we are going to, in fact, be making a turn as we open for the spring semester. Given the situation out there, we believe that a greatly enhanced testing process is going to be needed for our students on campus for the spring semester. So that, in fact, your campuses right now are designing exactly how those testing procedures are going to come about. But I'm going to tell you that there are going to be a lot of students tested frequently if you are on campus. We are urging each one of our campuses to do a twice-a-week testing for half the students who are regularly on campus. And the way the scientific model goes, it's the same 50% of students that have to be tested on a regular basis. One of the suggestions we are making is that you test half the students for the first half of the semester and the other half for the remaining part of the semester. So nobody seems to be, I don't know, too onerous a testing process. We are, in fact, urging campuses to utilize what are called the BioNext Now rapid test. This is a test that we get the answer in 15 minutes. It's a rapid antigen test. So it's a slightly different test than the PCR testing. But I wanted you to know that we are ramping up, and the reason we are ramping up. When we made it through the fall semester fairly well, but in fact, we made it through the fall semester with a background positivity rate out there among about 3.5%. It spiked to about 6 a couple of times in a couple of counties. The state of Maryland, everywhere in the state of Maryland, it's nearly 10% now. And as I said, the hospitals are overflowing. So we think we need to do our part to make sure that we're keeping our campuses straight. And we are going to, in fact, depend on student leadership to help engage the student populations to, in fact, be a part of that testing procedure. One of the things we want to make sure people understand is we're not looking for people, we're looking for the virus. And it happens to reside in people's nasal passages. So that's where we have to look for it. But we are going to ramp up that testing in a significant kind of way. So you need to watch for communications from your specific campus on how your campus is going to be doing that. If you have questions as we go along in the semester, you can let Annie know, you can let Zakia and I know, and we'll try and feed you as much good information as we can. The other thing I want to talk about is vaccinations. And in fact, if anybody's watching the news at all, you know that vaccinations have started here in the University of Maryland medical system. All of the frontline workers at this point who want to be vaccinated, and I'm frustrated that not everybody wants vaccinations, but they have been vaccinated. They are turning now, they are opening up a little bit more to physicians and office staff of referring physicians, but soon we will be making the turn to additional populations. And those will start with older individuals in the community and members of the community who have specific jobs that require a lot of interaction with the public, and then they go on down the line. The reason I'm saying this is that as we ramp this up, we are going to need help at the vaccination sites. So one of the things that we would like to do, and I'm talking to the Unified Command about this, we would like to set up a registry format and portal so that students can volunteer to be a part of the vaccination process. Yes, question. Or is she just?
I was just raising my hand. I would love to do that.
Well, what we'd like to do is we're going to set up a registration site so that people can, in fact, volunteer. I can tell you that there are a couple of challenges here, so I want people to understand, and we'll put all of this in that registration site. That each site has to work like a machine. It has to be extremely specific, and you have to know exactly what's going on at that site in the greeters, the registrars, the taking of individuals to the vaccinator, then to get them from the vaccinator to an observation area and then observe for either 15 or 30 minutes. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is ask people, if you want to volunteer, we're going to be asking you to volunteer, not just for a single day or whatever, but in fact to volunteer for at least a few shifts, if you will, at a vaccination site. So that, because you can imagine if you have a site that you're putting 1,000 people through a day to get vaccinated, to have 5 new people show up and say, what can I do to help, is not going to help. We need to be moving these, like, as I say, like machines. But in fact, there are 2 or 3 roles that I think most of our students would be more than capable of handling. In fact, the greeter, and another role that we call navigator, which is simply getting people from one station to the next station. So from the registrar to a chair where we have somebody qualified to give the vaccination, has the syringe and needle ready, get the needle in the arm, and then walk the person into the observation area. So you can imagine we're going to have sites all over the state. So what we will do in this database is ask for your name and your contact information. I think we'd like to know what your major and your year is. So if in fact we have some computer science majors that are interested, there may be certain sites that need some IT support, for example. And then we are going to ask for the city or county in which you would like to volunteer. So even if you are not on your campus, if you live in Baltimore City, it might be more convenient for you to volunteer at a Baltimore City site rather than at a Bowie or a College Park site. So you can imagine that this is going to be a challenge, but I wanted to let you, the student leadership, know that we are going to do that because we are going to need huge numbers of volunteers. And I will tell you that there may be a real advantage to volunteering at a vaccination site because people who work vaccination sites get vaccinated. So in fact, you might get vaccinated earlier than you would, in fact, if you waited until you came up in the priority list. So we don't have all the details yet, but I wanted to give you a heads up about this and say that we'll be interacting with you and hoping that you, in fact, will encourage your peers, your colleagues, to in fact be a part of the vaccination effort. It is going to be a huge effort.
Can I just say something really quickly?
Sure.
So I just actually left. I was working at Johns Hopkins Hospital. So I would work with COVID patients between 10 to 20 patients a night. I was working overnight. And I just left 2 months ago to advance my career. So this is definitely up my alley. So I'm definitely interested.
Great. Well, we will in fact, there is a question about how long the shifts are. They're going to, in fact, I think vary from site to site, but many of the sites are going to be open for 10-hour days. So what we've asked them to do is break those into 2 5-hour shifts. So you could say, yeah, given your schedule, I can work in mornings and I'm willing to work at least 4 or 5 times, over the next several weeks or whatever, or you may be asked others. So there's a question here, are the sites only in Baltimore? They're going to be all over the state. And in fact, there may be some sites that are going to be set up on your own campuses. The logistics of these things is absolutely incredible. I'm on a call every morning at 7 o'clock and every evening at 5:30 trying to get the logistics straightened out to, in fact, make vaccinations possible. And the idea of exactly how many square feet you need for a vaccination station, for the greeters, for the observers to, in fact, observe social distancing. That's one of the things the navigators are going to do, is consistently make sure that people are social distancing as they move through the vaccination process. So it's going to be a huge lift, I think. But I would love it if our students stepped up to help. Let me see, there's something that just came up.
Rashad's hand has been up too,
Yeah,
Joe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Who was it that had their hand up?
Rashad.
Rashad, okay.
I have a quick question, Joe. I think I can speak on behalf of all of our colleagues that say this is exciting news. I'm very excited to see where this goes. But I did have a question that you touched upon briefly, but I was just wondering, what are the logistics of requesting our own campuses to be a vaccination site? Do you have
We're working with the local health departments as well as the medical system to set those up, and we will be working initially with the presidents and the facilities management people, so that I mean, one of the things one of the challenges for any vaccination site is access by the public. And for example, if we have a vaccination site on a campus, we don't want it right in the middle of where all the students are on a usual day. We want it separate from that, but the site itself has to be accessible by the public, by public transportation or a parking lot, so that in fact, depending on the campus, we have to balance both of those things, because we don't want our students being exposed to lots of public when in fact we've been able to keep our campuses safe up to this point. So that's where we're trying to keep all of these different elements in balance. So it's a really good question, Mershad. That's why we're working closely with the presidents and the facilities folks.
Joe, some of the student affairs vice presidents and health center directors are in on those conversations too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mershad, it's several people in several conversations, and I know they've been having them over the last several weeks. So
the other thing that I would say is that we are also working with the deans of those schools that are training health professional students. So our schools of nursing, our schools of pharmacy, our physician assistant program, and so on. That's a different process. Because in order for an advanced nursing student to, for example, to serve as a vaccinator, certain barriers have to be crossed, hurdles gotten over to make sure that their liability is covered completely, so that they have certain qualifications and that they will be covered with liability. So for example, we have many of our pharmacy students who are serving as dose preparers. The doses are prepared in a separate area and drawn up into the syringe, and then the syringe is delivered to the vaccinators. And pharmacy students may be qualified to load the syringes, but they may have to be supervised depending on what year in pharmacy school they are. So that's a separate set of conversations that we're having with those professional schools. But you're going to hear that some students are going to be put into places to serve as vaccinators and pharmacy backup if they are so qualified, in addition to these other more generic roles that many of our students would be qualified to handle.
Do you happen to have a rough timeline as to where we can expect to both see the sign-up sheet for the students and, a general idea where the vaccine sites are going to be?
Let me get my broken crystal ball and see how well I can do this. But I think we will try and get the volunteering set up within the next couple of weeks. And then depending on, word has it now that the federal government is going to release more doses of vaccine more quickly, so that in fact we may have to ramp up more quickly than we had planned over the last couple of weeks. But one of our real challenges here is to time not only the preparation of the sites, but the messaging. I know that everybody is frustrated because nobody can figure out when they come up in the list. Well, we recognize that, but one of the discussion points is if we release that messaging too soon and the vaccine is still not available to those first people, we're going to have masses of people banging on our doors. So we recognize that it's frustrating, but we want to time both the messaging and the preparation of the sites. We don't want to have all these sites prepared and not have vaccine to deliver to the sites either. So timing all of these is, it's been fascinating to watch. Now I know why they call in the National Guard, because in fact, the people on these logistics teams, they have military training. I mean, they know what they're doing, and it's right. Yeah, Laura, right along the line. Academics aren't real good at that kind of thing, but this has been an absolutely phenomenal learning experience for me, certainly, to watch the logistics be developed.
Thank you so much, Joe. Joe, if you could, I'm going to start getting Brad ready to go here, but if you want to answer a couple more questions in the chat that have come up, that would be great. And you can just type the answer in the chat, and then I don't know how time restricted Brad is, so I'll go ahead and I'll introduce him. So Brad, I think I saw you. You're here, yeah?
I'm here, yep.
Oh, welcome, Brad. We are so happy to have you. And I'll let you introduce yourself while I get your slides up.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm literally in the middle of moving right now, so sorry I just got you my slides, but I
No
wanted to make sure I
worries.
made this, but I was behind schedule. Well, hey guys, yeah, I'm Brad Fallon. I am Delegate Eric Ludke's Legislative Director in Annapolis. He's the Majority Leader of the House. He represents parts of Montgomery County, and this is the second year that we're introducing a student voting bill. This is the current iteration of it. But I want to thank you guys for having me, and thank you for overwhelmingly supporting the bill overall. But also, I know we had a quick time frame there before a press conference on Wednesday, and Annie helped pedal that out. So thank you for that. And by the way, Annie was awesome at that. She's a really effective advocate. Delegate and I think you guys did a great job picking a president. So we're glad to have you guys have a voice there. But just kind of a background, there's been a coalition of groups that have been forming around this bill for several years, and it's culminated into a bill. We're thrilled to have you guys a part of it now. And for a bill like this, and a lot of these bills where advocates don't have deep pockets, being heard and showing up is essential to getting the bill passed. So, I mean, truly know that having a representative of your organization is makes a difference. It's important, but it's also necessary to even getting this moved through the General Assembly. So, like I said, I'm just going to run through some of the main points of the bill here. I know you guys are already pretty familiar with it, so I want to make this mostly questions and answers and make a discussion. So, like I said, it's a multi-year effort. Last year, we had the Student Voter Empowerment Act. That passed the House overwhelmingly. It's tied in a Senate committee. It got held up there. And that was a weird chain of events that led to that happening. But it did make us regroup and realize that we're going to have to make some changes to the language in order to get it passed through the Senate. So we took the summer, met with stakeholders, senators. This is what we came up with. So Andy, if you want to flip to the first slide there. There's 6 main points of the bill I wanted to go over with you guys. I made a slide for each just to put it on paper. But the first is that the bill will create a formal process with local boards of elections for large residential communities to request a polling place. So these are colleges and universities, these are military installations, these are retirement facilities, anywhere where there's a ton of people living in a centralized place. Kind of expands the support that we're getting internally for that. But also we want people to have a polling place on campus. In the original version of this bill, we had mandated it. And it became clear, particularly in this budget situation that we're in now, that wasn't going to work. But this is a really great opportunity for, particularly higher education institutions to show, hey, we want this for our students if they don't already have it. There's a bunch of people that are having trouble voting because they don't have a car and they're living on campus or whatever. This at least gets the foot in the door to show that there's a real desire there. And hopefully, because it will be formally considered, get some polling places on campus. I'll move over to the next one then. So the second, and frankly, this is what the delegate and I think is the most important part of the bill, is that it'll require public institutions, college and universities, you all, to appoint a student voting coordinator who is charged with developing and implementing a student voting plan. And there are specific criteria what that plan has to touch on. But truly, places that do this really well, they all have a centralized place and a centralized plan of how they're going to activate students, disseminate information, have registration drives, really spread that civics education on campus. I think a lot of the things that individual universities have wanted, like I know I went to UMD, and I know UMD this year has really been pushing for election day off. And I think that a first step of really getting some movement and some force behind those type of things that campuses want is to make sure that we have as many students engaged as possible, and having a structured way of doing that instead of just relying on some volunteer work, I think is going to be really necessary. So if anybody has questions about what that role is going to look like, let me know. But if not, let's move on to the next one there, Annie. So this one, I know there's going to be some questions on. Like I just mentioned, I know there's a lot of you that want election day off. Currently in the state of Maryland, I think about a decade ago is when it was first passed, employees can get off of work for 2 hours if they don't have any other time to vote. So they say they have to work at 9, they can't get to the polls till 8, it's taken forever. They can be there by 11 and be excused. When that was passed, students were omitted, and even employees working for the institution, if you're like a student working there, you were omitted as well. I think that was a mistake then. This is fixing that. It's bringing students in line with the rest of state law and saying if they have no other time to vote, they need this time off, they'll be excused from class. So these next 2 points are pretty related, the next 2 slides. Essentially, we're requiring the State Board of Elections to maintain a webpage that explains how students who live on or around a campus can register to vote and vote. And the issue that we're looking to solve there, essentially, most students come from outside communities, whether it's elsewhere in Maryland or out of state, and they might be registered at their home address, and then they are on campus and they have no idea how they're going to vote or whether they're even allowed to vote. And in fact, in past, I know Senator Elfreth, who's our Senate crossfire on this bill, said that she had some issue when she was a student, even being told whether she was allowed to vote there, which isn't the case. So this is really important to disseminating that information, making a web page that is dedicated to these students in these situations, make sure they know what their rights are. I know it came up at our press conference the other day that voting is habitual. And a lot of the college students are voting for the first time. And if we make it harder for them to vote their first time, they might just not even bother the second time. But if we make it easy and they have a wing of it and they're already registered to vote, it'll continue. And that's really a long-term investment that we're in for. And then if you want to hop to the next slide, it's very related to what I just said. This just requires more than just the State Board of Elections. Both public and private institutions of higher education have to have a web page like that on their home student portal. There's also tracking to that. They have to report annually how many times it's been clicked. That's to make sure that that information is in a conspicuous location on the webpage. And if not, they have oversight structures in place with MHEC and the Maryland Independent Colleges University Association, MICUA, to make changes to that. The next slide, that is the last student aspect. So this is the last point overall. Like I said, last year was just the Student Voter Empowerment Act. This year we incorporated some military elements to the bill. That actually came from a Republican delegate, Mike Griffith, of Harford County, who is a Marine as well, who had said, there are some issues that he's aware of. If there's some kind of simple things to be a good vehicle for it. So over the summer, we had conversations with the Department of Defense and their Federal Voter Assistance Project, which is great for the armed services. And what they pointed out was how difficult it is for military members overseas to request an absentee ballot and to register to vote, because they need to have a wet signature. So this is a simple fix. It just allows them to use their CAC cards, their common access cards, in place of their signatures to register to vote and request an absentee ballot. So guys, I know I burnt through that super quickly. I think you guys were already somewhat familiar with it, so I didn't want to harp too much on the details, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Hi, Brad. This is Yvonne. Arsenal and I were just texting. We would like to schedule a meeting, so we're going to shoot you an email just so we can get a meeting in to kind of go through this a little bit more.
Yeah, happy to. And did I hear at the beginning when I hopped on, you're in ECM this year?
Yeah, I am.
Right on. So I'll be seeing more of you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll connect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, I think there are a few questions for you in the chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, how do I see him now? All right. So the question with the CAC with contractors, no, the way that would be set up, they wouldn't be able to. That's a good point. When they're overseas, although they would still be able to register to vote. So this is the process that's currently happening overseas, is that they can register to vote online already in Maryland, but they have to be able to print out, sign something, scan it, send it back in, and they just literally don't have printers and scanners. That's basically the issue we're solving. I don't know if that's the case with contractors, but I'll have to look into that. I haven't heard that come up.
And somebody had a question. They're not able to be here at the same time as you are here today in the meeting, but I promised I would relay their question. I think more than one person had a similar question. So the question is from Bowie State. We support all the aims of the bill And we'd like to see the requirement for 15 minimum clicks on the web page be removed because it is odd, redundant, and arbitrary. So long as the bill continues to stipulate that there be a link on the institution's homepage, state election site, and made available in close proximity to student course registration and financial aid pages is sufficient. 15 might be good for some institutions and terrible for others. And not all institutions have analytics platforms set up for this. So it may require hidden background labor and infrastructure that wouldn't necessarily rest with the student voting coordinator.
I think that's a good point. I think it came up last year, with conversations with MICUA and MHEC, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and USM, Pat Hogan over there. That the backside of that, the IT side of it, hadn't come up as a problem, frankly. There has been some concern about whether it's arbitrary, whether it's totally different the amount of students you have. Frankly, the 15 clicks is the less important part of it. That's just the minimum. If it's not even getting 15 clicks, then there might be a larger problem, right? There might be something to look into. It's really just a vehicle for there to be some sort of oversight on whether this information is reaching the students. And so, maybe it isn't a conspicuous location, and they're just not getting clicked into. There's no penalties or anything like that as a result. It just kind of flags for there to be further look into. Okay, have they actually appointed a student voting coordinator? Do they actually have an effective plan rolled out? Things like that. So I see the point, and I think that's going to be a continued part of the conversation.
Thanks, Brad. Bernetta?
Yes, hi, Brad. Nice to meet you. My question is just what role did students play, in just enacting this, developing this, and giving feedback? I know there were a lot of points you made about changes that will be made that will affect institutions and campuses, but I don't know that we've heard kind of who was involved from a student aspect.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, like I said, this is a multi-year effort. Actually, I came from the Senate. I came across the street to work for the delegate last year. So it was already ongoing. So the very beginning of it, I don't know from the origins. I can tell you with developing legislation in the last year or two with this, it's been student governments at different places. I mean, we work closely with like Towson, with UMD, UMBC. I know we've been working with Johns Hopkins, MICA, which is, I'm always forget what it actually stands for. It's the College Art School over in Baltimore, which is fantastic with voting plans. Their student base has been just an incredible resource with this. My understanding is that this was something, my boss is a professor at UMD and the School of Public Policy there. This was something they kind of started in conversations with students and seeing what other states are doing and just built from there. So between student organizations like Mary Purg even, and student governments and just individual students, there's been a lot of insight and input from them. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And I was asking because I know, that's very important. And just looking for ways to get students involved as much as possible is always important to us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. And then if I was reading the nonverbal cues right, Beth, did you have something earlier when you were unmuting?
No, I was just gonna sort of build off the whole clicks thing and sort of put that into context. I think one of the constructive suggestions that we had also considered suggesting, and full disclosure, I work in marketing, so like the analytics piece of it's what I do every day. But that we thought that maybe if there was a requirement that it be located around key pages where you have to go to register classes as well. Like I know most people don't bookmark necessarily the home page of their school if they're an active student, they bookmark where they have to conduct class business. So making sure things are located in proximity to where students are conducting their regular transactions might be a bridge to sort of alleviating how that happens.
I think that's a great point. And I'll have to check. I'm actually blanking on the exact language that we use on the bill. I can't remember if we just said conspicuous location or specifically homepage. You guys might have just seen it. That's a good point. I mean, that is the goal of it, right? Is that where students actually go in. It might not be like UMD's homepage where like, we go visit if you just look at UMD or UMBC or something, or where you go register classes. So it's already authorized to be moved. The goal is to be targeted, with the student voting coordinator to make sure that it's in the most helpful place with the most helpful information for these students. So I appreciate that. I'll look into if we need to change any language for that. That's something to look into. And I have a message from Nate Sansom about the fiscal note. Nate, we don't actually have the fiscal note yet. This was pre-filed. Everything's moving super fast. The hearing is actually going to come up here the second week of session. So next week. We just don't have it yet. We should get it this week. We expect it to be very, very small fiscal note once we've taken out the mandates. I mean, it's really, there's some back end stuff. Frankly, universities and colleges won't have to hire somebody to be the coordinator. They can just appoint somebody already working in like student affairs or something. So we don't expect it to be a major fiscal note.
Thank you. I was wondering how that would change with it not being mandated, because I assume it'd be quite a variable cost there.
It would be. Yeah, and that kind of got in a weird place anyway, because you might just have to move a polling place if it was mandated instead of adding one. So the costs were shaky depending on the Board of Elections, but you're absolutely right. It made it way cheaper, which this year is very good.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Nate. Brad, if it's okay, can I ask a question? I wanted to get more kind of inside info on why choosing clicks. Like if it's to hold the universities or colleges accountable, could they use like the national NSLVE, like the National Study for Learning, Voting, and Engagement, right? Like what exactly was the point of the clicks?
The clicks were genuinely because in the past, college and universities have added these web pages and put it somewhere where students had no idea where it was. Even if they were looking for it, they couldn't find it. The idea was just, okay, let's make sure that people even know what this is and can find it somewhere on their web page. Yeah, I mean, we had all these type of conversations last year. I think there's a lot of people that look at that and they're like, okay, why are we harping on the clicks? We kind of came to the understanding with the institutions that it was really just the only way to figure out whether it's being used or not that isn't overly burdensome on the institution itself.
And just to follow up, thank you. Certainly that makes a lot of sense. Considering like the census and the redistricting that's likely going to happen, do you think this bill might come up again next session when there could be a possibility to actually have a provision in the bill about requiring or establishing polling places on campuses, right? Because for somebody like UMBC, which is where I'm coming from, College Park, Towson, you all have polling places on campus, right? It's not an issue for UMBC. We can't even walk to the nearest polling place, and transit there is difficult and typically organized by the student government. So I definitely would be curious to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, I think everything's on the table for the future. That, like I said, that was what the bill was last year. We'd still love to see that. If we can't get buy-in, or if a bunch of colleges and universities are requesting it and being denied by the local boards, that would say, all right, we actually need to step in here. So yeah, I don't know if it's next year. I don't know if it's 2 years from now. I don't know exactly when that is, but this is just a first step, right? I mean, we're trying a bunch of new stuff here, and then I think there's a lot to continue to build on it. So.
Yeah, that's what. Thank you, because I appreciate it. We've been following it for years now.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Joe Baughman, the Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs. We hope the NSELV data becomes available soon, but for the last presidential election, 2016, and then the midterms in 2018, the USM NSELV data showed that our institutions were either number 1 or number 2 in the country for systems in both registration and voting for students. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. We can always do better. 82% isn't good enough. We'll push it higher. But in fact, I've put Dr. Shapiro's email in the chat. She is the one that is coordinating the Student Civic Engagement Group. Each campus has appointed a student to be the civic engagement leader for their campuses, in addition to this student council. So we have 2 different parallel tracks going, focused on this kind of civic engagement and work. But we're proud of our voting record so far, and we'll push even harder next time around.
Listen, I think you make a great point, and I was kind of remiss for not mentioning that earlier. Maryland's already doing a great job, and this is just giving people the tools to fix what we're not doing perfect. So yeah, you make a great point. We could be doing a lot worse. I think yourself and many people involved with the system should be very proud of the work that's been done. So good point. And thank you for sending me over Dr. Shapiro's contact.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
About the bill. One of the specifics of the bill, you said that the 2 hours cannot exceed or the hours of absence cannot exceed more than 2 hours. Is there a reason why there is a maximum but not a minimum?
Yeah. So, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the minimum, maximum, and one. I think that's a very good point. I understand the call to just get election day off or take as much time. Frankly, it's twofold. One is that 2 hours is already the law for everybody else. It's an easier case to make. Okay, let's just bring everything in line than do something, over the top than what other people aren't already getting. And it's just the political realities of getting it through the Senate. There's some concerns of giving, a huge amount of time off, whether they're founded or not. I think it's a worthy conversation. But I think just the political reality of it is not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good here, and trying to bring this in line with state law.
Thank you. Rashad?
I did have a quick question. I'm a little confused now based on what I know from my own institution, because we as UMBC did try to push for, the complete election day off for this year. However, we were told that everyone gets that day off automatically. And I know that is true, but I'm not sure if other institutions do this, but we put that day off towards winter break between New Year's and Christmas. It's a total of different holidays that we have off, and we don't actually take those off on a days indicated. We just take them off towards the end of the year. So I was wondering if this 2 hours is in addition to, that day off that they get, which is allocated to the end of the year. I'm a little confused based on what, we are pushing for.
Yeah, so that sounds like an individual institution decision. Which this bill decides. It sounds like, I didn't know that. It sounds like you're saying UMBC already has off on election day. Classes are canceled.
No. So it's indicated off, but however, we push that day to the end of the year, towards our winter break for staff, if that makes sense.
Okay. So the 2 hours off isn't like a move back or anything. It's just saying you're excused from class if you have class during voting hours and you can't make it to a polling place any other time. So it's not pushing it anywhere. It's just saying you can't lose attendance points or something like that because you weren't in class while you were voting.
Okay, and that's for students, not faculty and staff, right? It's just for students?
Yeah, I don't know the exact law. I would think that, and so don't quote me on this, I would think that under current state law, most faculty and staff are already excused because they're employees to have the 2 hours. This would affect student employees. So if you're a student working at the library or something, you would be able to miss 2 hours of that work. But there's only two things that this bill specifically adheres to.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask, I was looking through the bill and I couldn't quite find this, and I was wondering, would this apply to both primary and general elections, or would it only apply to general elections?
So this would be applicable for either election.
Okay.
And this is for every 2 years, correct? So not just the federal election, but also state elections as well.
That's right.
Would it also include city elections, or just any municipal smaller elections?
For the 2 hours off?
Yeah.
Yeah, on election day, my understanding is that yes, as long as it's the way it's written now is my understanding, at least, as long as it is an election day in your area, you can get an excused absence.
Thanks, everybody. Does anybody else have a question?
This is just something actually going off of Dan's last point with municipal elections. I think it's particularly interesting because you could feasibly have I'm just going to use the Eastern Shore as an example. you could have a student at UMES who might live in Salisbury, so would need to be going across county lines to vote in a local election, which they could just get a little bit complicated with those municipal elections. If you live in one county or go to one university, and yet your elections in a different county, and it might not be an election day in both counties. So just having that time off, it's still very important, but maybe a little bit challenging to navigate in those scenarios.
Yeah, and to be clear, and I need to make sure that all the local, because that question actually hasn't come up to me before, all the locals actually are impacted here. I don't see why they wouldn't be, but I need to contact council. But it certainly wouldn't be under the way that this bill is written. If like there's an election in Aberdeen, Maryland, and you're in College Park 2 hours away, you're not just going to be able to drive because you're registered there and miss class. Is that what you were asking essentially? Is if the students go somewhere else to vote?
Yes, I was thinking, some of our universities, you could feasibly live in one county. It might just be a 15 or 30-minute drive away, but it could, those dates might not always line up with the local municipal elections.
Yeah, I'll get back to you all on that. I think that the way it's written right now, it would apply to municipal elections, which most of the times are paired with state and federal elections anyway. But there are some one-off municipal election days. I'll have to get back to you. I'm not 100% sure.
And I do see one more question in the chat as well. The question is from Kyle, our friend from MHEC. I'm so happy to see you back, Kyle. How would the voting window operate for students that are outside of the state and have travel obligations?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it one more time?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's how would the voting window, the 2-hour window, I'm guessing, operate for students who are out of state and have travel obligations?
So you're saying if they vote, like say you lived on the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland and you drove to a different state to vote, am I understanding the question correctly?
Hi, Brad. I can just jump on here and clarify my language. I think that may be better. So one thing that we encountered in MHAC, which is the council that I'm a part of, was students that have transferred into the state. So they may have been a Virginian undergraduate student. They're doing grad school in a Maryland institution, and they're still required to vote in their state that they have their residency in, even though they're attending a school within the state of Maryland. So how would this bill support them? Because we had several students that had to make a 3-hour drive back to Virginia because that's where they were registered, even though they were attending MICU.
Right. Well, one, we're really expanding mail-in voting in Maryland. For those students, I would encourage them to vote by mail instead of making that trip. But frankly, this bill doesn't specifically address them. I mean, it would still give them the right to have 2 hours. Well, maybe not, right? I mean, if it's not a state election in Maryland, but it is in Virginia, they're not going to get excused to go vote the way this is written. So, yeah, unfortunately, they might be left behind there. If it's a federal election day and everybody's voting anyway, they could still drive and come back to class, and they would have a 2-hour window grace period there. But outside of that, there wouldn't be any special provision addressing them.
Anybody else? All right, with that, big thank you. Thank you, Brad. And also a little shout out to Brad. Brad, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you graduated from a USM institution.
I did, yeah. I went to College Park. I repped my
oh, you are.
So I was like, I have to. I'm talking to the USM people.
So we might be back in touch because something that we're looking to do more of is connecting our council to folks who were, member students of the USM who have ended up in things relevant to this. So maybe we'll be reaching out to you to find out how those interested might become a delegate's legislative director one day. Like, how did you end up where you are? So we'll reach out to you about that.
Please do. Yeah, and I think, Annie, I saw you sent out my contact information as a part of this. Anybody here, feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions on this or just anything else with the state, I'm happy to talk. I was a student engaged in state politics at one point, and I can nerd out on it all day. So I'm happy to talk.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And as things come up that are like this, that you think directly relate to students, please keep letting us know. And until next time, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bye, Brad. All right, everybody. I think we are all wanting a bio break. I'm seeing many a direct message. So bio break it is. um, so if we could reconvene here at 1:05, then we'll be able to stay on schedule, I believe. So enjoy. We'll catch up back in that little bit of time, about 12 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So, we've learned a lot today. We have done a lot already today. I don't know about you all. I'm already sleepy from everything that we've covered today. Um, but we keep trooping through because this is what we do here. One thing I wanted to do, because I forgot it earlier, my bad, was to let you all know that Chancellor Perman wrote me back in December, and he had planned to interview the 4 finalists for Student Regent very quick, like very fast turnaround, which was really awesome on his part. So I do believe they were all interviewed, which is pretty awesome. But from that point on, I am not sure what the update is, but I know that some of you have requested an update. So I will turn to Joe and Zakia. Do we have any other updates beyond that?
The update we have is that when you sent the forms or the information to them the week after you interviewed them, the chancellor interviewed all 4 of them the following Monday. And in fact, then sent all of the appropriate information to the governor's office. And now we will wait to hear from the governor's office on the next steps in the appointment process. But yeah, Chancellor Perman turned it around after I think he got the email on Thursday or something and had them interviewed by the end of Monday.
That is mind-blowingly fast.
And yeah. I will say that he was extremely impressed and pleased and complimentary of the student council for having done such a fine job. He very quickly understood why you sent all 4 instead of 3, because he had a hard time differentiating among them as well. He was extremely pleased with the quality level of engagement, maturity, and excitement on the part of all 4 of the candidates.
Definitely. I can't wait to hear, but I genuinely would be happy with any of them. Personally, I can. I thought y'all did a great job too. That's my way of saying y'all did a good job.
Yeah, I would only add for clarity that the next thing we hear is who it's going to be. We don't get any other feedback, no rankings, none of that. We just hear from the governor's office at some point, and when we hear, we'll share it with you. But that's the next thing that happens.
Thank you. Awesome.
And if I could just add to that, remember that I'll be here through the end of June, and then Aaliyah will still be here through the end of June of 21, and as well as whoever is onboarded as I move out. So Aaliyah will still be a part of the team as well for the next year and a half, and keep on going from there.
100%. It's so cool. At one point when we were doing this process, I looked around the nation to see how uncommon or unusual this was. This is fairly uncommon. So it's really, really, really cool that Maryland has a student region, especially a voting one. There's a few systems that have a student region, but they're non-voting. So sometimes we got to take a moment to just say, woohoo, we got something. And that is a student region that can vote. So, so that's really cool. And now we have a second one who's non-voting that gets to learn, which is also very, very awesome.
Annie, I would just add to that, some of the other systems or in universities that have a student member of the board who votes, they do not serve in an equal status to all of the other regions. They may be there to vote on directly on student issues. There are really not that many at all where the student has exactly the same voting privilege that all regions have.
So it's very cool. So the next part of our time together here today is really defined by all of you. So I thank you to the 8 institutions that let us know what you want to talk about in breakout sessions today. I do apologize. I did something wrong when I copied our form off for this month. So I can see what people want to talk about, but my little ranking system is really not pretty this time. So I'm not going to be sharing the screen because it just says you got answers right or wrong, which isn't the case. I actually do know what you want to talk about because I can look into every single response and tally it that way. So I'm just going to do it that way. Y'all are going to have to trust me. If I haven't gained your trust by now, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think you know that I pretty much want you all to know that we read all the stuff you want to do and that we're going to do it. So with that being said, the top things that were identified did actually switch up a little bit this month. They did. So a number of schools identified affordability in various ways, shapes, and form as a top issue, almost alongside and equal to, I think because they are so interrelated and connected, this idea of essential needs. So right, they go together because it's like people are having trouble affording essential needs or having access to essential needs, and that they really do go together. So those were 2 of the top ones. A couple of things alongside the affordability as well is again this idea that students are having a difficulty with understanding why they are still paying for things that they are unable to use due to COVID. Many believe that their student fees or tuition should be lower or partially refunded. Students also are concerned about grades, which ultimately affect scholarships. So again, this idea of these things all being affected by COVID-19, and a few schools did mark COVID-19. And then I would say the third and fourth, again, kind of pretty close here, were diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for the first time making it up to the top was Title IX. So we had a few schools naming Title IX. So those were the issues for our VPs to make note of for the 2 breakout rooms, for grad and undergrad breakout rooms. And with that, are we good for breakout rooms, Akia? I know you're trying to manage a lot today. I feel so bad.
Joe, I need extra hazard pay for my IT work today, please.
I know.
Submit it, I'll pay it. You know I will.
Okay, I am going to click what appears to be something that will let you choose your room. And so I am going to ask that the graduate students click the choice to go. So I'm just creating one breakout room. And when it gives you the option, those who are graduate students to choose to go to the breakout room. Undergraduates, please stay. So I will rename it grad, and let's see what happens now. It says you've been invited to join, maybe.
Ooh.
Hey, Annie.
Yeah.
Can you pop those topics into the chat for everybody?
Oh, I sure can.
Thank you.
Okay, and if you see the ability to click something to go to the graduate room, please do that. If not, I will pull out my list and figure out what's going on. Undergrads don't need to pick anything.
Some people have figured it out, clicking on the breakout rooms icon at the bottom, and then grad pops up.
Oh, great. Thank you, Joe.
Am I grad or undergrad today?
Go grad.
Okay.
Okay, I see some questions in the chat. I'll get you 1 second if you can't make it happen for yourself.
Zakia, I see the breakout room, but I can just see who joined. It won't allow me to join.
Okay, all right.
Same as Yvonne.
All right, I'm sending some folks over. 1 second. Okay, there's Yvonne on my list. See you later. Joe, I'll send you. Who besides Annie is still with us that needs to go to the other room? Please just tell me your name. Say your name. Ashley, okay. Ashley's going to grad. Is that right, Ashley? You want to go to the graduate room? No.
Ike does.
Ike needs to go. Annie, I'm going to send you now. Okay, did I miss anything in the chat? Ike went. Okay, so those of you who are left should be here for the undergraduate breakout. If that's not right, please. Oh, wait, I didn't send Ike yet. He's still on my screen. Maybe he just left. Okay. If you need to go, let me know. Otherwise, this is undergraduates, and Bernetta, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our breakout today. So we got about 3 topics to try and cover today. I hope everyone saw the notes in the chat, but let me just go back over them really quick. We have affordability and essential needs, DEI, and then Title IX, it looks like. So I guess like we usually do, is there anyone that wants to kind of kick things off? And we'll start with the one at the top here, affordability and essential needs. In terms of what's been taking place at your campuses and ideas and things that you want to specifically address today.
Yes, I kind of have a question, Bernetta, just because I'm wondering, I think affordability, we could look at it from any number of aspects, and I'm just wondering, whoever is interested in this specifically, what it is you hope that we will be able to accomplish. Because I know, like for many of us, for example, we've already paid our tuition for spring, or we will be paying it very soon, but many of those things have already been determined. So is it something where we want to go after a certain fee and be advocating for that? I know Towson had some success with having fees refunded. It just depends on the institution. So I'm wondering, it's kind of a broad umbrella. I'm wondering, is there a more specific avenue that we want to focus on with that, looking forward to spring and beyond?
Great point, Nate. And is there anyone that selected that specifically that had something in mind to Nate's point and what you wanted to be able to address?
Can you guys hear me? Or did you want to go first, Dan?
No, feel free to.
Okay. So at Towson, like Nate said, we have been working with trying to get fees reduced, and we did have some success with that for the fall semester. And we were looking into it for spring as well, but it's not looking like many administrators are willing to budge, just because we keep getting the same comment that the money is going towards other things that can't be reduced per se, but when we ask for a breakdown, we're not receiving a breakdown that's actually clarifying where the money is going. But our students are really upset that they're still paying $500 for an athletics fee, and no one's allowed to use the gym besides athletes. And it's kind of baffling that now our COVID testing is also going to be randomized, and you can't request to have a COVID test unless you're showing symptoms, which I don't think makes sense. We shouldn't have to have severe symptoms to get a test. If you feel like you might have been exposed, you just be allowed to go just to make sure that you're okay. And in general, they won't reduce tuition because they say that the online school costs more than in-person school, but students just are unhappy with the fact that they're paying this much to basically be at home or be in their dorm room and not get to go to class and not have the same experience. And teachers just aren't as prepared as they would like. So I'm not sure if we could, as a USM, be able to force fees that aren't like auxiliary fees that aren't being utilized to not be charged, or if there's an opportunity for that. And if not a reduction, then possibly like emergency grants or something of that sort that might just be able to help alleviate the cost for people who are struggling.
Yeah, I'd go with that and say, at College Park, at least, a majority of our fee receiving units have done a good job of adapting and changing their offering. So like our students can still go to our gym if they're on campus. Obviously, the students off campus, that's a concern. If they never came back to campus and they're still paying for it. They also have online classes though, and so like that's a way that they adapted to ensure that even if you're not on campus, you can have access. But the athletics fee is the biggest one. The athletics fee is ridiculous. The fact that we're paying, I think at College Park, I think they told us, I've been doing fee stuff since my freshman year. I think they told us at one point it was like 75% of the fee goes to tickets, which makes sense, right? Tickets is a big cost. But the rest of it, we should still pay, but we shouldn't pay for the ticket part, because every time we bring up the athletics fee, we're like, well, the athletic fee goes to more stuff. And we're like, we're not stupid. Like, we recognize that. But 75% goes to tickets. And if no student has access to any single game, they shouldn't be paying for that. I personally believe we should still pay the rest because it supports scholarships, it supports student tutors that help the athletes. Like it supports other things, but the tickets part is ridiculous. And every time we ask about it, it's, well, it goes to other things, and we try to bring up, but it doesn't. 75% of it we can get back. And every time we say that, the conversation just gets ignored.
I'm glad we're experiencing the same thing, Dan. At least I know I'm not alone in this fight.
It also doesn't surprise me with athletics. Athletics has continuously been, I think, across all of our schools, and College Park in particular, they can get whatever they want because they bring in so much money. And I think it really becomes an equity thing when you look at departments across campus that are really struggling. Athletics is struggling, but at the same time, they're doing better than other departments, and they can just get whatever they want at the end of the day. And even if we bring something up with such logic of saying we should get money back because it's not going to tickets, no student can go to a game and it's going to tickets.
And I do feel like it caused a divide at my school as well between like non-athletic students and the athletes in general. It was like all over social media that they were just going back and forth, and people are like, okay, well, I'm not here to pay. It got to the point people were saying, I'm not here to pay for your scholarship. And that's where I was like, okay, well, we do want to make sure that people are still going to school with the promises that they were given at first. But if we're not going to games because we're not playing anymore, then there's money to be given back here. And we're basically just robbing people at this point.
100%. I agree. A lot of students at College Park want to get rid of the athletics fee for tickets in particular, because when you look, obviously we compare ourselves to the Big Ten a lot. I think we're one of 2 schools that has an athletic fee, like one of 3. I actually don't mind it. I love games. I'm one of those kids that does utilize it. But when we look at like this semester in particular, if the fee is allocated for a specific purpose and you can't utilize it, such as tickets, right, you're not changing this. All of a sudden, they're not giving every single student access to Big Ten Network and, cable, like whatever it is. Like, they're not giving us access. You literally cannot utilize this service whatsoever, unlike the other departments who have adjusted and found ways for students to still be able to use their services online. Students should get the money back.
Can I ask a question? Zakia, are you on this call with us? Yes, you are.
I am.
I see on our EPSL, we have a EPSL meeting on Tuesday, and just so you all know, all of you would be welcome to listen into that call. And if you want anything said, you can of course email Aaliyah or myself. But Zakia, I see on our public session agenda we have a report on extramural funding. Does that have anything to do with sports? Can you touch a little bit on what that may look like, just so we can have a little bit of a preview before we go into that this week?
Sure. Extramural funding is completely separate from the conversation you all are having here. So extramural funding, think about the professors, the centers, the departments on campus who are getting grants from extramural outside organizations to fund their research or fund their center. So National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, $1 million grants, multi-million-dollar grants, UMCP and UMB are the schools that get hundreds of millions of dollars in extramural grants to fund research. And that's the extramural funding that we're talking about. So across the system, it's about $1.5 billion that is raised from federal, state, corporate sources, foundations also, a little bit from the system office or between institutions, but that is funding research and academic things of that nature. So separate from this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for help with some of the terminology there. So as far as looking at many of these fees, I know each one of our schools sets their own fees. So it's one of those things where as a system, we really, I mean, our board approves the fees every year, but we really don't have much to do with the individual institution determining what you're going to be charging for. So what do you think would be the most appropriate avenue to address some of these concerns that we're hearing throughout this conversation today and other conversations we had towards the end of the last semester?
I think it's absolutely legitimate for you and or Annie on behalf of the students and in both of your roles to share the feedback that you're hearing with the chancellor, with Dr. Boffman, who will share it out when we get back to our bigger group, and then with Ellen Herbst, who is the Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance. It's good for them to know or be reminded. I don't think it's new feedback, but to be reminded that this is still a concern. And Ms. Herbst meets with the institution's vice presidents for administration and finance. So when you think about where tuition is set, there's a different vice chancellor who has those conversations. So in most cases, she would do what we would do with a student affairs issue. She'd share that information or share the feedback she got from you all with the VPs for administration and finance. That's the system kind of a work that could happen. Also, the institutional folks should, if they are not, because I'm sure that some of you are, be familiar with where students sit in the fee setting process on your campus. I think that works better some places than others. If you need some help trying to understand that or navigate that, Joe or I could try to point you in the right direction. But if you are the student government president or the graduate student association president, you should either be a part of that process or understand how students are selected for part of that process. I'll try to find the USM policy that guides that work, because there's a policy that says there should be some interaction, some participation by students. That does not mean that students or faculty or staff will make the final decision, but there should be some process, some fee setting process on campus that probably has already started or gotten underway for next year at this point, because you all are right, spring is set. So in many cases, we may be talking about what's going to happen when you all are out of office and leaving things for those to come after you. But let me find that policy. So the information can be shared with our vice chancellors and chancellor from Nate and Annie. And then I'm recommending that the Graduate Student Association or Student Government Association president understand where the students fall in the fee setting process at your campus.
So let me add a little bit to what Zakiya just said, because that's a really good point in terms of we may be looking at the next year. There's got to be planning underway. But I think we should not be, dismissive of what has already taken place, because by learning what's taking place, where is the money going? If it's not being used in the way that it's supposed to be used or that students would expect it to be used, then how is it being used? And that's going to help inform us for next school year. I don't know if it would be helpful, Nate, for maybe you and or Annie to maybe do a poll or maybe have a specific list of the fees that are not clear and that students are requesting justification for, whether it's athletics or another fee that they've mentioned. But it sounds like we definitely need more transparency and communications about where the money is going. I imagine retention and recruitment would also be interested in that as well, because I know that students, they're having a hard enough time maintaining as it is. So without the comms piece to this and justifying where's the money going and why should they continue in the way that things are going, I think it's going to help everyone all the way around.
Absolutely. And once again, this does look a little bit different at each school because, it is determined by each institution. So it's not a one size fits all across the board. Say as far as moving forward, and I just say this because I know last semester we were all adapting, to the changing circumstances and trying to make sure that we could stay in person, or for those classes that were in person, or making sure that the virtual things were being worked out. But now that we do have a little bit of a better handle on things, I think there could be some value in having a USMSC letter that then Aaliyah and myself and Annie, we could take then, or Aaliyah and I could take it to the board and to the EPSL committee, and at least there, rather than it just being me saying, oh yes, there's this concern, like I did last month at our Board of Regents meeting when we talked about the grading concern and the graduate student bargaining concern. And if we actually have a letter from USMSC, we can then take that to Vice Chancellor Herbst and others to say, this is what our students' concerns are, and we can actually have, detailed items listed there with regard to whether it's specific institutions that there are questions about ticketing, like Dan mentioned. Obviously, that concern at College Park is probably not a concern that we have, at somewhere like the University of Baltimore. And so I think just, those institution-specific concerns we can certainly have in there, but also broader concerns with regard to, like you said, transparency of where money's going, because, some money has needed to be moved around as testing is very expensive, PPE is very expensive, and as we've had to adapt to these changing circumstances, necessarily so, but just having, encouraging just that communication there. I think communication is a key part of this, and that's where our provost, our VPs of finance and student affairs, really are pivotal in that. And so I'd certainly like to help coordinate and facilitate that for both this semester, and then also making sure that we're leaving everybody in a good position who's going to be coming after us. So I hope maybe that's something that we can discuss in further detail when we meet later this month, just amongst the, yourself, Laura, Annie, and myself as well.
Yeah, I want to jump in and just say, with all due respect, this is the mirage of shared governance, because the issue that's happening is I believe most of us are talking about this at an institutional level. I can at least speak to College Park. Like, we are talking to, our vice presidents of administrative and financial affairs. We are talking to our university president. We've been talking to all these people. In fact, our provost, who the student fee process now sits on, refused to actually have our committee for review of student fee meeting this year. So the students had to call it themselves. The students had to email the people on the committee to have it, because the provost, when we asked, said she would not do it because the fees weren't being changed. So then when we try to go up to a higher level, and then we're being told we'll go back to, because it is institution specific, go back to the vice president of administration and finance. Well, one, I agree. Like, if you don't start there, you're doing it wrong in the first place. You should be talking to university administration first and foremost, rather than going up and above their heads. But this is where the mirage of shared governance comes in, right? Like, it's not about students, faculty, and staff making the decisions alone, but when the administration on a campus level won't do something, and so you try to take it up at a system level, and then the system goes back to saying, it should be decentralized, it should be shared at a campus level. That's not doing much. All that keeps happening is conversations and little action. And so we need to find a way to change this into action. And I think, I always question what happens on the Board of Regents level, because there really is little student involvement on the Board of Regents level, but besides previously 1, now 2 students that are involved. And at most, that's still just a conversation. And so I think we need to take a step away from the conversations and start talking about, well, what can actually be done? Because if not, it's just this cycle, and the cycle never ends, and the cycle doesn't actually has anything that benefits students at the end of the day. Students on our campus that are struggling a lot financially right now.
Yeah. And, not to say that the institutions can't say, oh, we can't change this, right? But they should certainly be able to help students understand why, not just, no, this is what it is, everybody pay. But certainly, I think students deserve to know what's taking place and where the money's going. So
you're 100% right. It's not about like it has to be our way or the highway. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with students at all that believe that. I don't think it's a good way to try to do things. But I think you can't push conversations off and push them to other people, and then it just becomes a cycle, and that's what causes nothing at all, rather than like action can be, Bernetta, like you said, just explanation, widespread explanation.
So Nate, in the notes that you're taking, Nate, I think the clear ask for transparency. I think that was Bernetta's word, and others have agreed. I think that's worth stressing in the memo or in whatever you put forward, and that and maybe even students with whom we spoke understand that it's not going to always be the students make the decision. But the students would like to understand more than they understand right now, or something to that effect, because that is an issue for students, faculty, staff, or not just you all, but that sometimes what I hear a few rungs down on the ladder is that it can't be the students who make the decision or the faculty who make the or the staff, because folks have different interests, and so there are people at the top who are supposed to be trying to bring all of those things together. So in order to try to express that you all understand that, a group can't get its way every time, but as leaders, we would like to understand more than we understand right now. Let's start there. Yeah, we still may push, we still may ask, but at least let's start with transparency and clear questions, because what I think I hear Dan saying is, feeling the runaround. So, to change the structure of the system would be, that can't happen overnight. That's not going to happen overnight. So we will do better by saying, let's have conversations about how to be more transparent with our groups.
Thank you, Zakia. I think that's exactly what I hope to help us accomplish here. And I know this was also a concern when we had our special meeting in December. We ended up speaking about along the same lines of transparency and communication, as I know there were various concerns mentioned with communication with our provost as well. And so, Bernetta, let's just work on scheduling that meeting between us sooner than later, and then we can certainly make a list and get a letter written, and then I will take that as far as I possibly can with the board and with our EPSL committee, and we can make sure that gets disseminated to the provost and the VPSAs and everybody else who should be looped in, really under that EPSL umbrella. And so absolutely, I'll do that. And Zakia, thank you for your help with kind of guiding this. I know this has been, some of these waters have been difficult to navigate over the past couple months, but we certainly want to stay on top of this. And I mean, I care about this personally a lot. Obviously, I know it affects me just as it affects all of us here. And so I want to make sure that we are doing the very best that we can.
Sure. And Nate, let me make a suggestion. We can talk about this offline, but I'll share it for the group. With an ed policy meeting on Tuesday and a special board meeting on Wednesday, it may be worth some email exchanges between you and the executive committee to figure out some talking points and maybe offer it up as a preview issue that you will explore more. The board meeting, the special board meeting may be the better place for it, because I think the chancellor's comments will have to do with, broad system work and COVID and how we're doing life these days. I can't think of where on the ed policy agenda it would fit, although you are absolutely welcome as a regent to insert it if you want to. But if you wanted to flow with the conversation, it may go better. And you have your full board on Wednesday with the special board meeting. So let's talk about if there's a way to, at least preview that you're exploring something further with the USMSC and give some highlights.
Thank you. That sounds wonderful, and I would absolutely like to do that. So I'll be in touch with you, Bernetta, Annie, and Laura. And then I'll try to loop in or get in touch with you, Zakia, and Joe as well, just to make sure that I'm not going completely rogue, but still making sure that I'm pushing for what we could consider to be our student agenda there. And obviously would like to loop in Regent Gordine as well at the appropriate time with that EPSL component.
Absolutely. All right, we can do that.
So Nate, what's the ETS? So what is that? Could you explain that for maybe folks that don't know?
So that is our committee. That is one of the two committees I serve on, but it's the committee that's staffed by Joe and Zakia. It's our Education Policy and Student Life Committee. And so basically, most things we speak about as a USMSC are issues that come before the Education Policy and Student Life Committee. And as Zakia mentioned, we have a meeting on Tuesday where our agenda, just so you have an idea of what we do on a regular basis, we're approving or voting to approve a couple of degree programs across various institutions. So all of your new or modified degree programs come before our committee. We have most of the provost end up joining our calls, so various issues that the provost may have or that the VPSAs may bring up. Those are all sorts of things that come to our committee. Anything addressing, student areas of student life or education policy, like the committee name suggests. So that's what we do, and that's what Zakia and Joe, that's a large part of their portfolio at the USM office, is managing that committee and keeping us on the right track.
And here's the other caveat. Nate said that explicitly well and perfectly. The but is that when it comes to tuition and fees, that actually sits in finance. So there's a finance committee also. So this is something that if there were ever any changes, or when there are changes, when there are approvals to your tuition and fees, that goes through the finance committee. And that usually happens in the spring, March, April-ish. That is led by Ellen Herbst, who I mentioned before. And that's where that's where your institutions go to say, here's what we're proposing. Let's have these first conversations here at finance, and then it goes to the full board. So it sometimes there is overlap. This would be an overlap kind of an area, but that overlap is also why I was suggesting that it may just be as well that Nate say something during the full board meeting on Wednesday, when finance folks and ed policy folks will be in one place.
Yeah, I was going to say there is definitely some overlap here. Student life, that's our gyms, that's our programs, our facilities. That's a big piece of that as well. And if fees are being paid and yet students don't have access to any of those facilities or programs, then it takes us right back to square one. Well, where's the money going? So I can certainly see a benefit to presenting it in both places, or as many as possible, and where you see fit, Nate.
Thank you. Once again, let's just catch up offline as soon as possible, later today or tomorrow, just so I can make sure that I have everything that we can, in the short term, just going into our meetings on Tuesday and particularly Wednesday. And then obviously we can work on a letter as well for more of a long-term thing. So thank you.
And the flip side to this may also be, maybe campuses need to get more creative, right? Because it sounds like at College Park, they do have access to gyms at some point, but at other campuses, they may have no access. So maybe there's some lessons to be learned, and maybe we can elevate some of that and figure out how do we, make it so that if we are paying fees, they are being utilized in the best way, or we get a little bit more creative about that. So. But also
the only other thing I'll say before, I know you had two other topics you want to try to get to, is, even if you don't want to do it here, or maybe in the chat, maybe in an email to Nate, if you second these topics, because we heard specifically from Towson and College Park, I saw Rashad, nod his head on a few things. So, but if it's not applicable to you, then we may want to know that too, just to help with the wording, just to help with the transparency from our side. If it is applicable to you and you want to make sure Nate knows that you co-sign, then let him know, because it will be important to say, some of our institutions, all of the institutions, most of whatever it is, we want to make sure we get that qualifier as clear as possible, so that action conversations can happen where they need to happen.
Yes, that was going to be my point as well. If there's anyone that needs to add to this conversation or help us build out that specific list of the concerns around the fees, please do follow up with an email. All right, so the next topic on here is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think we mentioned this a little bit, right, at the beginning and top of the meeting. where, you know, we heard at our last meeting, in the last breakout that we did, there are some issues to possibly address here. But I know, you know, Paige, you mentioned at the last meeting, there wasn't a whole lot that necessarily came out of that, right? So maybe we should dig a little bit deeper, or let's just talk about, you know, concerns, especially right now. There's a lot happening right now, you know, in the climate, you know, around civic engagement. And there's a lot that has taken place in this current administration, and some things that were passed and put in place that affects all of us as well. So I think we should try to talk about that a little bit, and maybe let's see what you all are hearing, or what you think we can address. So who has some ideas around DEI? Or are there any issues happening right now at your campuses?
I can think of one. Around the end of last semester, we had an issue where one of our students was going on a social media platform and bashing a specific community. And then we, you know, they were targeting Muslim queers, to say, just to give you guys a little bit more details, and saying all these hateful things that could be potentially hurtful to, you know, people of our institution of UMBC. And then it was kind of hard to deal because there's issues of, you know, free speech and freedom of expression and using, you know, your First Amendment rights. But then again, you also have the issues of equity and inclusion within your own institutions. So I'm just wondering, where is that line between, you know, equity and inclusion and granting people the right to free speech, but at the same time providing support for the communities that might be hurt by that free speech at your own institutions? Do you guys have any policies in place for that, if that happens at your institutions? Because I know UMBC was lacking in response to this specific situation.
At Salisbury, I think we had a similar situation. I believe it was last summer, and I don't think there is a specific rule or specific guideline that guides reaction to those types of actions, because they are so focused on free speech and how they can affect or how they don't want to affect limiting free speech of anyone. But I think our not the student affairs, but yeah, I believe it was student affairs. Our vice president of student affairs, what they did was they reached out to the students who I believe were found to do these things, and basically gave them an ultimatum. I believe in some cases the students withdrew their because in this situation they were sort of doing the same thing and making disparaging comments about certain groups on Twitter, and I believe somewhere on Instagram, and they said that that wasn't what the university was about, and that they wouldn't be welcomed in this environment if they had those type of views and were spreading those type of views. So I think if, in lieu of a policy or a guideline in reaction to those things, I think it would be good to reach out to your VPs or student affairs or student conduct or whoever handles those things to see what they can actually do about it. I think it's sometimes disgusting that they go to free speech, because hate speech and free speech in my mind are definitely different things, and they can have a damaging impact on the student body and on individuals. But I think in terms of a university setting, that they're very limited in terms of administration and reacting to those things. So I would definitely strengthen that bond you have with student conduct and make sure and see if there is an opportunity to change that that student code of conduct or those guidelines towards those things. I think it's very helpful to start a conversation. The conversations don't always end up in actions, like Dan was saying earlier, but I think it's really, really helpful that you let them know, because sometimes they don't even know, but obviously something as serious as this, they should know and should have some action. But definitely reach out to them and make sure you can see where you can impact it, where it doesn't impact free speech in quotation marks. You can't say that kind of free speech.
Yeah, I think to add on to that too, I think one of the things that's been missing for years, because this keeps coming up like over and over again, it happened when the Bowie student was murdered. And there were conversations that were had with like Steny Hoyer and like a bunch of other legislators about how to like deal with the issues. And the same thing that we said back then is like the same thing now. They don't clearly define what hate speech is. And I think that's something that needs to be a guideline, and that free speech does not mean freedom of consequences. So, you know, when all of us go into the workforce or whatever, anything that we say, we companies, people, whoever are allowed to separate themselves from those actions. Like universities, and like I don't feel like they should have their hands tied because they're trying to like keep it super free speech while at the same time being complicit with the hate speech. So it needs to be clearly defined, and there needs to be action taken for incidents like this, because it's really easy to be like, oh, we don't want to deal with it right now because it's a hot topic, but it actually gives space to people to keep doing those things. And at the same time, the minority groups that are affected, it makes them feel unsafe, legitimately unsafe on their own campuses.
No, that is certainly something that, sorry, Paige. That's certainly something that happened at UMBC, and something that we do at our institution is that whenever we have any issue related to diversity and inclusion, the folks that are either offending anyone or, you know, being offended, we have a system where they receive academic clemency for the end of their finals. And this indicated person did receive academic clemency, which kind of seems backwards, right? But you know, just to follow precedence, we did that. But something that our institution told us was that, you know, since this person was not specifically targeting anyone at UMBC, there's not much they can do about it. Since it's a free speech, and, you know, they're not actually talking about any UMBC students, they're just putting out all these ideas on social media that they have, which I perfectly think they're wrong. So they said there's not much that they can do about it. They did put out a campus-wide message, you know, providing support, not saying anything about that person that offended, you know, the community, just providing support for the offended community. So, you know, since these are public institutions, and, you know, if they were to do anything to infringe on anyone's personal rights, I guess my question is, you know, what are some ways that we could do that, provide, you know, because I don't want to say punishment, but like consequences for people that are not directly, you know, targeting anyone at our institutions whilst being within their rights, if that makes any sense.
Well, from a brand perspective,
Sorry. Sorry, I'd like to chime in because I actually go to UMBC, and I like saw the video, and one of the things that struck a chord with me in how UMBC handled the situation was because I viewed it as like, it's different when someone says like a slur, like that's obviously blatantly hate speech, and that's no longer free speech, like that's punishable. But I viewed it as if someone says something racist towards a person of color or anything like that, even if they're not targeting or saying someone's name or an institution, that institution still takes action towards that individual. Like we see it on social media all the time. In this case, this person was being blatantly homophobic behind religion, but it was still targeting the LGBTQ plus community. And I felt like along those same guidelines, our university could have done a lot more to handle that situation, treating it as if it were a racist comment that someone put on Twitter, even if it didn't target someone of the UMBC community or anyone's name. It was still very blatantly, I would call it hate speech, even though it was like blanketed behind religion, which occurs often. But yeah, is there any way we can like check to make sure that they're more clearly defined of what is punishable? Because I felt like they kind of let the ball drop with that one.
So I agree with everything you guys are saying. So for those of you who do not know, I am one of the co-directors for diversity and inclusion. So I care about this issue a lot. There does need to be more transparency, especially in our code of conducts, because I'm not sure if everyone's code of conduct is the same across the board, but there does need to be some transparency, because it doesn't matter if you're specifically targeting just one person. It should be across the board. If there's any hate speech, slurs, or anything, it needs to be taken care of, some type of punishment. And I know people do want to use the freedom of speech to get a loophole out of it. There is freedom of speech that should be allowed, but it also needs to come with some limits. We just have to think about what type of punishment do you guys think would be appropriate for this? Because clearly just academic punishments isn't enough, at least in some cases. So what do you guys feel is appropriate for this?
Well, I think since we're getting students ready for the workforce, it should be similar to what they would experience in the workforce. There should be a process of somebody investigating, of an interview, of you know what I mean, like reprimands. Like, it does it mean expulsion? Like, how severe is it? Like, you can clearly define like items of like what things that are unacceptable in that space, like just like they do with the workforce. Like, there's certain things that you could do on a job that you could get fired, or you could at very least get a warning. So I think if they were to clearly define hate speech, then they kind of have a guide on how to reprimand people and, you know, actions that they can take versus just being like, oh, we don't have a guide still.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's less about what type of punishment and more about it needs to be recognized to begin with as something that should be addressed or categorized as hate speech. And what are they using? What sort of criteria do institutions have that separates the two? And there may be some overlap where they have to say, well, look, if it appears as hate speech in any way, if it's offensive to any of our students, because we're all a family, you know, it's not to be tolerated. So having a very firm stance, to your point, Ashley, about where they stand, whether it's via statement or whether it's a policy change of some kind. So I think we should probably let Nate weigh in here as well, in terms of how can we address that type of change or ownership at the institution level to support all students and to make sure these types of events are handled very seriously.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing, and I just look at it from an institutional level first, because, and I look at, like at SU, I know we have what we call our SU promise. And it's something that, you know, all students actually, as we're coming in, before we start classes in the fall, I remember in 2017, it was August of 2017, and we gathered for the whole ceremony, and they gave us all a pin with a business card that had the SU promise on it. And it was a promise about inclusivity and about doing our best, about integrity. And so that's something that I don't know I know we all have something that looks similar on our various campuses. And although that's not a policy, it is in itself a standard that we're expected to live by and to abide by. And so this is where we get into the weeds of, you know, student conduct. And I think a lot of that is really the most appropriate avenue for a lot of this to be dealt with, because it is issues of student conduct. And that's something that our VPSAs work on. So I would say, I think at a very basic level, it's very important that these things are reported, though, because we have offices of institutional equity, we have Title IX offices. Many of these concerns, when we're talking about hate speech, hate speech would be, in many cases, would be a Title IX concern. However, we can only go through that process if it's reported. And that's why I would just emphasize that it's very, very important that, you know, each school has a Title IX office, or you all have a Title IX office, or an office which houses that Title IX coordinator. And so it's just, even though it might be a lengthy process and some people it can be difficult to go through that paper trail and to relive some of these experiences that you'd be reporting. It really is imperative that any incident is reported, no matter how big or how small, because it needs to be documented for then there to be, you know, a conduct review or things down the line. And also, if we look at many of these instances, you might have somebody who's a repeat offender. So something might happen and you may think, oh, well, you know, I don't want to go down that road because I'm okay. But think about the person next to you or who might be coming after you. And in many of these instances, if you have somebody that's repeatedly committing this type of offense, it's important to document. That way there is that paper trail. That way when you go back and you look at that student's conduct record, it's not just an isolated incident here or there, but you can actually get the full picture of what's going on. So I would just emphasize, we do have board policies that are overarching, but I think this is something that it really is very important that within your campus and within your campus community, that we're making sure that there is that dialogue between your VPSA and your Title IX officer and your Office of Institutional Equity or whatever that may look like, and making sure that these instances are being reported and that we really are challenging students and holding them accountable to that standard, whatever that may be on your campus. And I hope that helps to answer that question, Bernetta.
Absolutely, Nate. You made a lot of points in there. To the point of the Title IX officer. Do students know who that is? Do they know the process for submitting complaints? Right. Also, I would advocate for a zero tolerance policy. Right. Like no excuses. And it isn't necessarily the burden of students to try and resolve this per se, right? I mean, institutions need to make sure that students feel safe at their schools. And it sounds like, free speech or not, whenever someone is attacked in any way, that certainly would not make them feel safe. And so there's a lot of ways to get around the free speech aspect of it to make sure that everybody can attend these schools and feel safe. And not have to worry about these personal attacks. And even if there isn't someone specifically named, I mean, that just means everybody's included in the attack, right? You don't have to have one person named for folks not to feel safe. So that is a concern. But it sounds like something that we would need to discuss a little bit more at length. So maybe through, the DEI committee, maybe that's an avenue where we need to dig a little bit deeper here and see what we can do.
Yes. So Mershad just sent me the petition that they signed. You guys have 2,385 people who've signed this petition. So that's a lot. But we really need to take care of this issue. This is very serious. I don't know if you guys have heard my goals. I think I mentioned it back in the first meeting. My main goal as Director of Diversity and Inclusion is to make sure all students feel safe and accepted at their universities. So the fact that you guys are going through this, I'm kind of upset. I'm sorry you guys are going through this. But yeah, I think this needs to be brought up into committee. I'm not sure if you guys are in committee. I know Bernetta is in committee and Khalil, but yes, we should definitely bring this up. Is anyone else in committee? If you guys aren't, you're more than welcome to come because I know they would love to hear this, and they also have some really good ideas for situations like this.
And
But
I'm not sure if you sent out the information for the next meeting. I think you mentioned that today. There's another one coming up, but
yes.
Yeah, let's
February 19th, 5:30 p.m.
And I think Zakia, you mentioned you wanted to make a comment, right?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, and this can be further discussed in the committee too. It may be beneficial for one of your institutions, and this would not be on you to figure it out. I work with the folks, diversity and inclusion officers, chief, senior diversity officer in one name or another, to come to a USMSC meeting and try to help understand. I wrote down a couple of questions, what actions can be taken, where the free speech line is. Bernetta says zero tolerance. I don't know if that's possible, but those diversity officers are the ones who can answer some of these questions. Ashley asked about create numbers, so we pull data. Here's what I understand. Hate crimes, there are federal regulations that make institutions keep track of hate crimes. That's a high bar. Classifying something as a hate crime is a high bar. What you all are talking about are hate bias incidents, which are serious and sometimes turn into hate crimes. And as you're discussing now, kind of chip away at the fabric in the community of the institution. I don't think there are numbers, at least that aren't reported up anywhere for hate bias incidents. And so I think some of those divisions may be what you need to understand too. And maybe in the committee, Khalil and Paige, you all in the group can build on what's happening here in this conversation to figure out, if you had a chief diversity officer, senior diversity officer in front of this group, what kinds of questions would you ask? What do you want to know? I think Nate made the perfect point too, that all of you, almost all of you, your institutions have someone in that role. And so if you are not looped into them when stuff like this happens, you should be. But from a system perspective, from a USMSC perspective, if Paige and Khalil and their team can figure out, a panel of sorts, or some time of, Q&A, just pulling someone in and saying, students have questions. They don't quite understand what's what, or when it's out of bounds, or what can be done. Their conduct processes that are probably able to be held for some of these violations. And it's just really nuanced. And I think you may benefit from hearing from someone in one of those positions, but you have them on your campus too.
And they made another really good point about maybe it's a repeated offender. Maybe it's the same person, right? And how do we monitor that? And that was an interesting, I think, point you made, Nate, that we should also address within the committee as well. All right, so if there's no more feedback here, and if there is, we want to invite you all to the next committee meeting so we can do a deeper dive here. There's one other topic that we should try to get to, which actually is a perfect segue into Title IX and sex discrimination. So maybe the two are just overlapping today. Is there anything else we want to bring up today? And maybe, Zakia, it'd be helpful to give a little background about where things are with regard to Title IX, just sort of across the system, if possible.
Right. I was trying to unmute because you said sex discrimination. I think and I don't know who put this on the agenda setting list, but Title IX in most cases, when folks think about it, they're thinking about the processes folks have to go through if there has been some kind of violation. So if it's hard because right now the outgoing administration in August or so, Nate, the outgoing administration made it such that the institutions had to do a lot of work and revision to their Title IX processes. So if there is domestic violence that's reported on campus, or if there's some kind of sexual misconduct, the process changed to give more wiggle room. It's not the best word, not the most technical word, to be more responsive to those who are being accused of a violation. And so institutions had to change their policies. All of your institutions have Title IX or sexual misconduct policies. You can find those too. There's a system level sexual misconduct policy, and the institutions kind of model theirs after that. So that's a little bit of background that, things got a little hairy in the fall because of new regulations that were put forward that changed the way a conduct process would look for sexual misconduct violations. And in our opinion, it was going in the wrong direction because it was making it more like a court case than a educative process or a fair process that was not as intimidating for a victim. These court processes and the way it was getting set up was going to be a little intimidating, and we were still are nervous that people who have been victimized may not want to come forward because of this cumbersome, intimidating process. I offer that and say, we think it's likely that with the new administration, some of that might be rolled back. We don't know yet. We still got a couple of weeks until the administration is in. But if you think about Biden as the one who, was on the Violence Against Women's Act and knowing that there was a lot of pushback to the regulations that did come into place with the outgoing administration, things may change. So, so I say that to say maybe hold tight. Let's see what's going to happen. And I also say let's hold tight because any changes would be huge. We're talking about federal law here. This is not just, you know, how the campus is treating folks, because your institutions are bound by federal guidelines and regulations. So if folks need to do some,
oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were, I'm sorry, you may not have been finished.
like I said, folks need to do some legwork to just kind of understand where things are. Then check out the system level policy. I'll put the link for that. Check out your institutional policy and just kind of get a sense of how layered this issue is. But if you also if you have direct insight into themes of issues and themes of problems, let us know and we can figure out how to address that. And the last thing I'll say is that your Title IX officers from the campuses, with the attorneys on your campuses, meet with our system folks a couple of times a year. So there's coordination as much as possible to at least make sure folks are talking and they know they can call their peers at different schools to understand how things are playing out. But this is definitely something to at least keep our eye on. But we had a meeting with those folks in July before the policies needed to change. And we'll meet with them again soon to get a sense of how things have been going. But again, we're kind of holding out, hoping that this is one that changes in the first few months of the new administration, maybe.
That was really great information, and just a couple questions. One, is it possible that a Title IX officer can maybe come and talk to USMSC? And then two, are the policies different across institutions?
They should not be terribly different because they're guided by federal law. There may be some nuances, there may be some small differences, but when I give you the link to the system level policy, you'll kind of see the structure or components that should be in a campus policy. So it should not be terribly different. And we're talking mainly about the portions of the policy that set the rules for what a hearing looks like. That's where a lot of our concern was. Now, what campuses do to be communicative about the process and make sure students know how to go through the process or how to lodge a complaint, that's going to be campus specific. But the structure, what it looks like, having a Title IX coordinator, a lot of that stuff is set by federal law, and folks would be in violation if they weren't following. Nate, you want to add anything? I know this is
sure
your alley.
Well, actually, way back when I first came in July, in one of our first meetings that Joe and Zakia and I had, we spoke about this issue because it's when some of that regulation was coming down, and we had to restructure because we had to have these live hearings for these Title IX complaints, which would really turn what was a formal, more bureaucratic process into really a process that was almost similar to litigation, which you should not be litigating these issues. And so that's where we had a meeting and we were trying to just assess where we were, what our concerns were, and what we could do about it. And our board, actually, as a board of regents, we had to amend our Title IX policy because of the new federal regulations that we had to be in compliance with. So it was something that many on our board objected, and within the system objected to the new standards, but as it was federal regulations, we had to abide by them. And so, there was little room for what we wanted to do as individuals or as a system. And that's where, we continued to have that conversation of ensuring that we have resources available to our students. And one issue that I really focused on with the Attorney General's office and our Assistant Attorney General for Education, as well as our system office, was that of ensuring that there was funds available for, so someone who was lodging a Title IX complaint, a survivor, could hire counsel to represent them in this hearing, because if they were mandated to have a live hearing, it was very important that both parties were represented. So whether you were the accused or the survivor, you could both have access to this MHEC fund to hire counsel, outside counsel. And that was something that was really an important issue for all of us here, and that we had a conversation with the Attorney General's office and other stakeholders about. Essentially, with the new administration, as Zakia mentioned, it's thought that a lot of these policies may be repealed, but obviously, that would take a little bit of time because secretaries need to get Senate confirmation, policies, those wheels all need to turn together. So right now we still have to abide by the current policy, although looking down the road, there is optimism that some of these policies that were cause for concern may be changing in the near future. But in the meantime, as far as some of these Title IX concerns are concerned, just please know that, if anyone were to have to go to that live hearing, there are mechanisms through which they could hire outside counsel through this MHEC fund. And there are attorneys, there's a list of attorneys that they could consult with, and that those attorneys could be reimbursed through the fund for their services in representing either student in the case. It's not just one side, it could be either student in one of those cases. And so I hope I answered that question. And this is something that we had followed very closely and are still following closely, but it's something that we do anticipate will change.
Yeah, and I think we have about 1 minute left, so we can do like a quick round if anyone has something. And Zakia, maybe we could just look at having one of the officers or someone come and talk to us as a whole and explore a little further here. Excuse me. Does anyone have any initial feedback really quick at about 30 seconds maybe? All right, well, stand by. We're going to be merging soon back into the meeting with everyone else. I think we did a great job today getting through all the topics. So.
All right, I closed it. Annie's already back. I closed the room. So give it about 40 seconds.
Yeah, it didn't even give me an option that time. It just brought me on back. Thank y'all. Was your breakout session good?
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna show one thing off real quick before we delve into debriefs, because there's always so much. It's like guaranteed I will forget something. All right, so welcome back from all the breakout rooms. Our friends at Mary Perg, I just put the link in the chat, but just so you know what that link is, Mary Perg is having an event this Tuesday called Maryland Legislative Process 101. So for the people in this room, but also anybody you know at your various institutions, if this is something that piques their interest or something your groups are interested in, it is free. You just have to register via that link I just put in the chat. This is where it will take you. And they are working to help people learn how the process works. But more specifically, if you had interest in that climate bill, I think that's their focus. So I just wanted to share that with you all because I know some folks are very interested, which is very cool, in the climate bill. Awesome. So we're back. And woo, I don't know about undergrad, but graduate student breakout session was intense in a good way, but also in a like, oh man, not we wish those things were not going the way they were going. So with that, just hearing from both VPs, we'll start with undergrad. What would the undergrads talk about, Bernetta?
I'm still consolidating. Oh my gosh. As you mentioned, Annie, I don't know how we did it, but we got through all three topics as well. And it was really great conversation and some really great takeaways. So let me see what I can throw together real quick. So with regard to the affordability and essential needs, it seems like this is just across a lot of our institutions where student fees are still a very major concern. and students are paying and don't know where the money's going. And it's different in some ways where, for instance, at College Park, there's access to the gym or other types of facilities, but at other institutions, there's zero access to these things, but the fees are still in place. So we talked about, the exec team, you, myself, and Laura, as well as our student regents, Nate, coming together. I know we have a meeting on the books, I think, this week sometime, but looking at how to address this, soliciting more feedback from the representatives across this council. They'll follow up via email. And then Nate has some meetings this week as well with Ed Policy and Student Life and the broader special meeting with Board of Regents, where he's going to do some plugs and address this as well. We know that we're looking ahead to the next school year at this point, but we don't want to forget about what's already taken place. And we think maybe more transparency and communications to explain where are the fees going would go a long way with students, even if there can't be change overnight, that would make a really big difference there. In addition to that, we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there were some very real specific incidents that were brought up that students feel have not been fully addressed or properly addressed by their institutions. And so we talked about the difference between hate speech and free speech and policies currently in place, and what can we do to strengthen these policies so that students aren't just out there doing whatever they want, and other students feeling attacked or not safe at their institutions or welcome per se. And if institutions aren't doing their part, then students may or may not feel welcome there. So that was a real concern. We like to leverage the DEI committee to further talk about that and see what can be done. So Paige was going to share information. And Paige, you can drop that in the chat if you like as well. And we want to invite as many persons possible to have a more lengthier conversation because this is a real concern. Nate brought up that, students should be able to connect with Title IX officers to be able to go through those, proper complaint channels as well. And the more that is documented and recorded, the more we can see what's taking place. And Zakia also mentioned inviting representatives from the universities to speak directly with USMSC, our diversity rep. So really good stuff there. And something similar along the lines of Title IX, just there are Title IX officers at all of our institutions, and maybe they would be willing to come and speak to us as well to kind of explain where things are. We know there's a transitioning happening between the administration, so we do expect to see some additional changes, hopefully soon, whether it's rolling something back or putting some new things in place. Zakia mentioned that policies shouldn't be too different across the institutions, but the complaint process may be very different. And of course, there's still some concern about the direction that things have been going in, and that students may not want to come forward with complaints anymore because of the court processes and things that are in place. So one thing to just add to that real quick is we may not have a committee in place right now to specifically address Title IX, right? So we may want to think about how we can look at addressing those types of things in the future as well at the exec level.
Definitely. Thank you, Bernetta. And thank you everybody in the undergraduate breakout session. It sounds like we had some definite similarities in the grad breakout session. So with that, Laura?
Yeah, I took 2 pages of notes in shorthand, but still it's a lot. And I'm going to try to summarize. We started off our discussion with affordability and the COVID impacts of affordability. University of Baltimore started off by talking about the availability of student employment on campus and how COVID funding has impacted this. And Shady Grove mentioned that they were concerned about how everything has moved to the virtual format. However, tuition hasn't changed. And also at University of Baltimore, I believe they're still being charged some online fees, even though in-person classes are not an option. And we heard from Joe about how the loss of state funding and auxiliary funds this fiscal year has severely impacted the USM budget, and things are really being handled on a school by school level. So whatever's happening on your campus, that is the decisions that are being made by that school. But what is happening up high in Maryland tax dollars is affecting down the chain. And that looks to impact students and budgets for the next at least a year and a half, possibly 2.5 years. We talked about the possibility of intertransferring between programs, and how that would actually, if that was really considered, then it would even more impact budget cuts. So it's just a mess. I really can't say it. Just there is no concrete answer right now for any of these concerns. It's just, we have to just be able to keep talking about them and seeing what we can do. Annie was very forthcoming, and she shared a personal story about her difficulties in her student employment. Her teaching contract ended without notice. She was asked to work without pay. She was awarded a grant, but never paid for that grant on time. And it impacted her ability to afford necessities, hours cut without warning, unable to report more than 8 hours, but unable to reduce her workload. Her assistantship didn't enroll her in health insurance. And College Park has taken a defensive position in opposition to these issues instead of being supportive. And thank you, Annie, for sharing all that to kind of highlight that sometimes even someone as connected as Annie can be impacted by these issues. And really, well, thanks for being brave and talking about it, because that is the thing, is that because complaining about sometimes these issues can have a negative impact with your program and your teachers and your coworkers, it can cause people to fall silent, which kind of echoes in our second conversation about DEI and Title IX, where we heard about students that were at a University of Maryland, Baltimore, that were having difficulty coming forward because their Title IX process was not working. And I know that you guys were talking about that in the undergrad, and specifically trying to come up with solutions. Because of the changeover in leadership, there might be availability. Jo has offered her support in helping to combat these problems and come up with a better process to support students. And at a minimum, UMB has asked that it should be easier to get a no contact order. That really seems like a no-brainer. And if any other schools are having concerns like that, they should definitely get looped in on that so we can figure out how we can solve those problems. See what else I got. UMB, or no, University of Baltimore has extra money and they're bringing tampons and pads on campus. Yay. That's pretty good. I thought that was a good one. And I wanted to end on a lighter note. Yeah, so some serious stuff, but it was a really productive conversation, and I really appreciate everybody that was able to contribute. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And we'll take those specifically from the breakout rooms today to talk after most of you all peace out. The directors and exec are staying behind. So we'll put some of these very quickly into action by tasking them to committees and to directors and to executives. So just so you know that your time is well spent, not as a place just for sharing, but also that there's action follow-up happening very fast in today's case. And some of these were really important. And I just want to applaud UMB again for how they shared their story about Title IX, because it had one of the clearest, most concrete, direct asks I've ever heard. So it was just incredibly well thought out. And the idea that, now we know the problem, and then naming like something to really target our efforts on a solution for, which is lessening the inefficiencies and the delays in time to getting no contact orders. So a no contact order shouldn't come 6 months after investigation, whereby that person was able to contact and bother and harass that individual for those 6 months. It should be easier to get in a faster time frame. And actually gave an example of their undergrad where that happened in less than 6 hours. So there are better models out there. So that was an incredibly compelling way to share a story. With a little bit of time that we have left, I wanted to give some shout outs for some highlights from our campus reports this week. Thank you very much for those of you who submitted it. First, I'll do the shout out for U Baltimore from Randy Wells and April King. I don't know if either of you are here, but their school passed 11 resolutions in December. If you would like to share with us a couple of things about that, any resolutions that you think other members of the council would benefit from knowing about, so maybe they would like to see what you passed, it might work for them too. And also, what do you do after you pass that resolution to make that resolution have as much oomph as possible? So Randy and April, would you care to share?
So I'm the only one here right now. It's April. I can send those to you guys later, but basically what we do after a resolution to make sure that it's enacted and it actually moves forward is we keep in touch with the administration, with facilities and everyone involved, and we make sure that they listen to what the students want and, perform everything that we need them to do.
As the person who actually has to do a lot of it, I will say it's a lot of emails, a lot of follow-ups. Everybody feel like I'm very annoying when I send them 50 emails a week, but I feel like sometimes you got to send 50 emails a week to get something done. Some of the highlights of what we were doing is working on creating essentially a way for students to get free menstrual products on campus in restrooms when they come back. So we are really happy about that, and we're going to be working on a partnership with OnFlow that is going to bring that to our campus. And the other highlight that I will share, because I think it's the one that's probably most prominent to what we were discussing earlier today, is related to student worker committees. So we created a committee that is for student workers, and any student who works on campus can join that committee and voice their concerns, so that way SGA can advocate for them. If any of your campuses are interested in doing something else like that to provide platform for student workers to speak, please let us know. I would love to share the structure and how we are going to do it.
Thank you, Dan and April. Really, thank you. Can't wait to see some of those. And thanks for sharing that, because I know that that's a question sometimes at campuses is like, okay, we did this resolution. Now what? So thank you. Thank you for sharing. And it's okay. It's okay, for lack of a better word, to be annoying. I will call it persistent. Persistence is good. Great quality. Towson, you wrote about something called a Know Your Rights campaign. Could you tell us what that means? It sounds pretty cool. If we still have a Towson person online.
Yeah.
Hey.
So basically the Know Your Rights campaign happens sometimes annually, sometimes semesterly. It kind of depends on who's the director in charge that specific year. And we kind of just teach people about how to be civically engaged and to literally know their rights and what they can do as a citizen. And if they're undocumented per se, like how they can go about that and still be civically engaged. And we've just been placing more focus on it, I think, this semester, because it's a little bit harder because it's online. So we usually have events like in our union, and it's a week-long thing. So they were just trying to make it more of an online thing. So having like Zoom calls and things like that. But yeah, we were really focused on it because of the upcoming election, and we worked with our civic engagement department on campus, and it was really nice and it was really fun.
That's awesome. If you want to like email the execs or anybody more about that, that's something we can definitely celebrate, but also it might be something other schools want to model. It sounds very cool.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure, of course. And then another campus report that really stood out with a very impressive number is Dan Albert from College Park. You want to tell the happy story of the reallocation of funds and how you all pulled that off in case others want to follow your model?
Yeah, did we talk about this last month also? We
I
might
don't know,
have.
did we? We had so many meetings together, I don't even know.
Yeah. We have another one Thursday. So College Park had some excess money from last year's student fees. So not this year's student fees. We allocate around $1.1 million each year. So last year's student fees, we saw some rollover. So we decided we were going to give that directly back to students in a way to benefit them, just like we would hope any department would utilize their fee as quickly as possible if they had excess. And so we came up with a few areas in which students could benefit both in the long term and short term from the student activities fee. So we allocated $300,000. So it's 426,000, something like that, dollars in total. So we allocate $300,000 to the student crisis fund. Our student crisis fund had been in the hole for a while, basically, because I think we average around 30 students a week requesting money from our student crisis fund, on average about $500 in disbursements. So $300,000 is going to go a long way to help them and students more specifically. That's like money in students' hands if they need it, which is the nice part. Building out a student culinary training center in our renovated campus pantry. SGA is fully funding that, which is exciting. That was like $49,000, something like that. We are putting free menstrual health products, so pads and tampons, in a select number of bathrooms across campus for the next 3 years. We're basically the goal of that one is like SGA can't fund that in the long term. So we're going to say the administration won't do it. So we're going to do it for 3 years and then use that data to advocate for them to put it in their own budget in the future. $10,000 going to expansion of free mental health first aid training. So that's going to support about 345 students being trained in mental health first aid, but that's targeting different leaders on campus. So RAs, Greek life leaders, student athlete captains, things like that. And again, same thing. We're only going to do that that's only for this semester, next semester, because we recognize and want to stress to the university that like mental health first aid training cannot be the end all be all. That's not going to all of a sudden make every student not deal with mental health crises on campus. So we're going to use the data for that to lobby for other things. And we also did $5,000 to expand our emergency meal fund, emergency meal swipe program as well. So that should somehow get up to 400 something thousand, which is really exciting. We had a fun news day with that too.
That's super exciting, Dan. And thanks for sharing that. And how you shared it, I think, is useful for folks to know, because I know everybody has different budgets and different things going on. But just seeing the thought process that went behind that, right? So thinking about, where do you have a budget? What can it go to? And if it's something you think the administration should be funding, but they just aren't for whatever reason, that was really cool what you explained. We're going to fund it for 3 years, collect data, and then advocate for admin to fund it. I just think everything you just described was very, very cool. So hopefully everybody was able to get something out of that. And also from the SGA, from Towson, Know Your Rights campaign, as well as we'll get to see some of them as well, but when we'll share those, but how to really make your resolutions work. Something that really popped out to me also on the campus reports, it actually still is you, Dan. I'm sorry, I'm going right back to you. We ask every month, and this is kind of building up to that shared governance report, how shared governance is going. And Dan, I was really impressed by how you articulated this. So what was and maybe it was Dan Laugh, and if it is, I'm sorry. And if you can say that if it was Dan, but that shared governance is limited, and instead what you see existing on campus is shared communication. And I think you're really hitting on something very key right now. Would you care to expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I talked about this a bit when we were talking about fee stuff in the undergraduate one. I think shared governance exists, right? Like it definitely does. It just depends on where it exists. I think what we're leaning towards though is just shared communication and like this like fake shared governance essentially. I think we really saw this when we were talking about affordability in the undergraduate session, right? We're talking about issues that we've addressed on a campus level. And it says, all right, well, we can't address it on a campus level because there's no action. And Bernetta stepped in and I totally agreed with her on this. And so what I ended up saying is like, action can be explanation, right? Like action doesn't need to be what students say, it has to be the way. I completely disagree with that ideology if any student has that, because I don't think that actually progresses anything. And so there's no real action. And so all that it becomes is you can't get something done at the school level, so you go to the system level. The system level says we'll communicate information to the Board of Regents, but in reality, we only have in the past one, now two students talking on behalf of students at the Board of Regents. It's still just communication. It's still just information sharing. It's still just shared communication. And when we can't shared communication, that's a win too. I mean, like even right now, we try to get some communication and administrators act like they don't know what's going on. And so I think it's starting to become frustrating for students who have experienced shared governance in the past, who are now starting to see simply shared communication rather than shared governance. There is no meeting in the middle. It's pretty much just, here's some information. And that's not with all administrators, that's not with everything, but I think in a broad sense, what I've picked up on at USM SC meetings is that, and hearing from other students across the system as well.
Yeah, I've heard that too, Dan, and I just never had that beautiful way you nutshell put that in the campus report. I was like, that was a really excellent way of putting it. Do folks have things they want to add to that? Ideas? Have you broken through that barrier at your school? If so, how?
I would just say that if there are concerns, I mean, that's what Aaliyah and I are here for. We are only two voices, but we're two voices that are here to work. And I hope that, I've been to every meeting I possibly can. I hope I've shown that to everybody. So please reach out to me directly if you ever do have those concerns. Make sure nothing's ever going unsaid. And so I understand this concern. We spoke about this at length in our undergraduate breakout, and Zakia and I threw back and forth a few ideas and ways in which we're going to work with Annie and Bernetta to work on those talking points for this week and then a letter in the long term. And so, please, that's why I'm here. So please reach out always.
Very good. Do folks have anything else to add? I know only like 6 schools were able to do their campus reports this time. If I didn't mention your school and you didn't do a report, now would be the time to share any concerns or ideas or things you just want to share with everybody. All right, very good. Well, it's great to see you all. Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, I think we can head, well, this does not apply to the directors and the execs, but those of you who don't have a meeting right after this one, so we don't have to get people back online. It was always a pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much for your engagement, your honesty, and for caring so much. It came through today, but it comes through like every time. So see you next month. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
And Annie, should I stick around here or should I go? What do you want me to do?
You can go this time. We're going to be reaching out to you real soon.
Okay. And Bernetta can fill you in on our undergrad chat because we really did have a good conversation there that's pretty timely as far as wanting some things before Tuesday and Wednesday. So I know we want to set up a meeting. Let's do that. And then at the very least, let's